Chapter 361 Seal Imprint. Hiruzen took half a minute to compose himself and gather his thoughts. However, despite his lively thoughts, the look of exhaustion never disappeared from his face. Of course, Fujin's clone completely ignored the long pause he needed. Hiruzen asked, "What help do you need?" Fujin's clone replied, "I'm working on Fuin Jutsu but have hit a roadblock in terms of speed. At my current speed, I need around an hour to create that seal. It makes it useless in war. I need some help and advice in regards to that." Hiruzen was surprised. He thought, he has already reached that stage. A seal that needs an hour to create will be a very complicated one. It looks like he will soon be a grandmaster. No harm in teaching him seal imprints. But Hiruzen said, "All right. I can help you with that. But I have a question as well. Did you ask anyone else to help you?" Fujin's clone tilted his head and asked, "Why would I ask anyone else, Grandpa? You are the one everyone calls the professor." Despite his vast experience, Hiruzen couldn't help but look at Fujin's clone with a deadpan expression. He muttered internally, "I have led Konoha for over 4 decades. I have lived through 3 deadly wars. I never expected that I would experience so many firsts within a few minutes at this age. This is the first time anyone sent a clone to ask for my help outside of wartime. Apart from my students and children, this is the first time anyone has come to me directly for help without asking anyone else, and this is the first time someone directly asked me to send a shadow clone to help him." Fujin's clone maintained his innocent expression. However, he was laughing in his mind. He thought, "Old man, you have tried brainwashing me with the will of fire so many times that I don't even remember the count. I guess you even believe that you have succeeded. You even asked me to call you Grandpa. Let me see with what face you decline my request when there is no good excuse." Hiruzen was in the same dilemma as Fujin had calculated. Though he regularly preached the will of fire to motivate his ninjas to push themselves harder for the village without having to do anything himself, the will of fire was a two-way street, just as he had expectations from the younger generation. The younger generation also had expectations from him that he had to live up to. Of course, that wasn't necessarily bad for Hiruzen. After all, unlike Fujin, who viewed the will of fire as an ideological tool, Hiruzen believed in the will of fire completely. In fact, he could be even said to be the most devout follower of the will of fire, so he usually did what was expected of him even before anyone asked him to do so. However, when faced with someone like Fujin, Hiruzen realized an issue. He shuddered while thinking, "If I agree, it will create a dangerous precedence. What if everyone else begins running to me for every small thing? How many shadow clones can I even create? Until now, though everyone knows that they can ask me for help, they are very respectful and mindful to not disturb me too much. But this boy..." Unfortunately, Hiruzen could just sigh internally and hope that others didn't get any ideas from this instance. His principles didn't allow him to say no to Fujin without any reasonable reason. He replied, "All right, I'll send a clone to help you." Fujin's clone smirked internally and thought, "Lord Hokage really is the best. I can't imagine this being done in any other village, even among the Hokages. I guess just future Naruto, and maybe Minato and Hashirama would agree to such requests." He weaved a hand sign, and a shadow clone popped next to him. The clone approached Fujin's clone and said, "Let's go." Fujin's clone immediately said in a respectful and excited tone, "Thank you, Grandpa." The 2 clones immediately left and arrived at Training Ground 23, where Fujin was waiting for Hiruzen while thinking about the 4 symbols seal. He looked up and looked at the 2 arriving, and thought, "I see, he sent a clone." As their eyes met, Fujin's clone dispelled himself and passed the memories to Fujin. Fujin smiled and said, "Thank you for coming here despite being so busy, Grandpa." Hiruzen's clone's eyebrows involuntarily twitched. However, he immediately put up a smile and said, "How can I say no to a youngster who is working so hard? Which seal are you working on?" Fujin replied, "The 4 symbol seal, but I'd like the same advice for other seals as well. I recall you sealing up the Suna Junins using Juin Jutsu. But despite learning almost all Juin Jutsu, I can't activate them that quickly. I still need more than a few seconds, which is just too slow to be used in a battle." Hiruzen's clone was surprised. He thought, he has already learnt the 4 symbol seal. That's the most difficult seal available in the library. Has he learnt all the other seals, or did he just focus on this seal? But why does he need this seal? He became suspicious but didn't show it on his face, and asked, "Have you learnt all the other seals in the library? Or did you focus on the 4 symbol seal after becoming an Ambu captain?" Fujin answered, "I am done with all Juin Jutsu and simpler seals in the library. I still have a few complicated seals to learn. but they didn't seem as good as the 4-symbol seal at restraining enemies. Especially the enemy Jinkyukaris, so I decided to leave them for later, Hirizen's clone realized. I see, I guess he is more obsessed with this seal due to his encounter with Roshi. Normal chakra suppression seals have no effect on a Jinwekarik. Even advanced ones are useless against ones that can use most of the tailed beast's chakra like Roshi. Regardless, such speed is very good. In terms of speed of learning the seal after getting access to it, he is slower than only Kushina and Minato ever since I became the Hokage, and his chakra is lesser than theirs at his age, so the effect of shadow clones should be lesser for him than them. He nodded and answered, I understand, it is a good choice. Your issue is a pretty basic one that all seal masters have to face. Unlike ninjutsu, you can't create seals in the blink of an eye, as it isn't entirely dependent on merely manipulating your chakra and is much more complicated. Especially complicated seals like the 4-symbol seal. Fujin analyzed Hiruzen's words and nodded. He asked, so, how do we shorten the time? Hiruzen's clone said, it's pretty easy. The concept is similar to pre-made seals that you use instantly in battle. Can you figure it out? Fujin began thinking. After a couple of minutes, he shook his head and answered, no, I had thought of creating seals for the same, but those are for one-time use, while I can make a lot of them as a preparation and have a similar effect. It won't be the same. In addition, I won't be able to modify the seal if I use seals I drew on paper. The only workable idea I have is probably creating the seal partially so that I can use it by just completing the remaining seal. But I am not sure how I could sustain a partial seal for that long without it putting a drain on my chakra reserves and taking a lot of my attention. Hirizen's clone smiled and said, not bad, you're a bit off, but the method is similar to the two ideas. The clone raised his right hand and showed his palm to Fujin. In an instant, the 4-symbol seal appeared on his palm. Fujin's eyes widened in surprise. He thought, that was almost instantaneous. It's as if he merely needs to think about it to create the seal. Hirizen's clone said, most people consider Grandmaster as the peak level of Fuin Jutsu. Every Grandmaster in Fuin Jutsu is respected by every ninja. However, for the ones who reach that level, becoming a Grandmaster is just the start of the journey. Once you reach this level, there are two things you need to do. The first one is imprinting all the seals you have learnt on your body, preferably the palm. This allows you to use every seal that you have imprinted instantaneously. I would have taught you this after you became a Grandmaster, but since you asked me before you became one, I'll teach it to you now. Fujin smiled and said, thank you Grandpa, but what is the second thing? The clone smiled and said, it's to create new seals. Fujin thought, that was a stupid question. What else could they do? He replied, I'll leave creating newer seals for the future. For now, can we start learning the imprinting part? Chapter 360 to the complications in creating seal imprints. Hirizen's clone nodded and said, yes, but before we start, I need to warn you, to complete this is even more difficult than becoming a Grandmaster. In Konoha, we have 10 Grandmasters, the most of any village, but including me, there are only 3 ninjas who have completed this step. And even we can't be said to have truly completed this step, as we didn't imprint hundreds of seals that we judged to be unneeded in combat. Fujin raised an eyebrow and asked, why is it so difficult? Hiruzen's clone answered, it is easy to imprint seals at the start. But as you keep increasing the number of seals imprinted on your body, it becomes increasingly difficult. The reason has to do more with your ability to create multiple imprints on your body and your ability to remember everything about them without any error. Due to this reason, this step becomes very difficult to complete. It takes around a couple of decades to complete this step, as the shadow clones won't be of any help here, and the high time required makes every Grandmaster reluctant to complete this. They will just imprint a few important seals and instead use their time for other tasks. So before we begin, remember this, only imprint the seals that are important for you on your body. If you create a good seal in the future that you want to imprint, you will face difficulties if you imprint all the useless seals on your body in the future. If you want to complete this step like me, go ahead, but don't waste your time on this in the short term. Fujin thought for a bit and nodded. He said, all right Grandpa, now can we begin the process of imprinting the 4-symbol seal? Hirizen's clone immediately shook his head and said, though 4-symbol seal is a very high-level seal, creating that imprint will be a task for you, so you can learn how to do this by yourself. I will teach you how to create imprints with 2 other seals. Though Hiruzen's words sounded sensible, Fujin couldn't help but think, why does it feel like he is not saying something? Hirizen's clone didn't say the following out loud and only muttered in his mind. Not to mention, Making an imprint of the 4-symbol seal will need around 1.5 to 2 weeks and will have to be done in multiple phases. I don't want to keep sending a clone daily for the next 2 weeks. Unfortunately, Fujin couldn't read his thoughts. He replied, "All right, which 2 seal imprints will you teach me?" Hiruzen's clone replied, "The 2 seals that you'll use the most, chakra suppression seal and self-cursing seal." Fujin said, "I see, a Fuin jutsu and a Juin jutsu so that I'll get a hang of both." Hiruzen's clone nodded and said, "Yes, once you get a hang of how to imprint these seals, you should be able to slowly work the rest out yourself. But I'll advise you to not work on the imprint of the 4-symbol seal until you try a few other seal imprints to get a hang of this technique." Fujin nodded. Hiruzen's clone said, "Before we start, extend your hand and show me your palm." Fujin followed his instructions. The clone asked, "Are you aware of where the chakra points in your palm are located?" Fujin nodded. Inspecting chakra points on his own body wasn't a difficult task. After all, those were the points from where his chakra would be emitted from. Hiruzen's clone said, "Good, create the chakra suppression seal and observe from which chakra points your chakra is being released to support the seal." Fujin nodded and created a chakra suppression seal on his right palm while observing the chakra points that were releasing the chakra. He mentioned the location of the chakra points to Hiruzen's clone, who nodded his head in agreement. The clone instructed him to memorize those chakra points. Once Fujin was done memorizing, Hiruzen's clone said, "Now place the seal on your palm without activating it. Remember to place the seal such that it covers all the chakra points that release the chakra to power this seal. Try to place the seal as much as the center of those chakra points as you can." Fujin followed his instructions. Hiruzen's clone continued giving instructions to Fujin on how to imprint the seal on his palm. Round 15 minutes later, Fujin exhaled a lot of air. On his right palm, the chakra suppression seal was imprinted. Fujin observed the seal and thought, "Wow, the seal is completely imprinted on my palm. I can activate it with a mere thought. This is different from my earlier uses of this seal. Though I could use this seal rather quickly, it isn't even comparable to my current speed. But the imprint is a problem. Wouldn't everyone be able to see this? I don't see any such imprints on Hiruzen's hands either." Hiruzen's clone immediately noticed his confusion. He asked, "Are you wondering why my palms don't have any such imprints?" Fujin nodded. The clone answered, "Because you have just completed the first step. Now sit down and focus entirely on this imprint. Flow your chakra through it. Control the seal and reduce its size to as much as you can." The clone extended his palm and showed it to Fujin and said, "Focus chakra in your eyes and observe me properly." Fujin's eyes began glowing as he concentrated chakra in them. A chakra suppression seal appeared on the clone's palm. Immediately, chakra began flowing through it, and its size began decreasing. In mere seconds, the size became so small that no one could see it with a naked eye. A couple of seconds later, Fujin couldn't see it, despite concentrating chakra in his eyes. Hiruzen's clone instructed, "Now that you have seen how it works, copy the method and try it yourself. Don't worry about messing up. You can always destroy the imprint and create a new one. But the process is a bit complicated, so try to get it done on your first try." Fujin nodded and began copying Hiruzen's method. Soon, chakra began flowing through the seal. Fujin took control of the seal and began decreasing its size without changing the shapes and proportions of the symbols. Over the next 5 minutes, it decreased to the size of a mere black dot. Fujin's concentration was at its highest level. His mind didn't have any thought apart from maintaining the shape of the symbols while decreasing the size even further. Hiruzen's clone observed, "I didn't expect him to do so well on his first try. His chakra control is better than I thought. It looks like he kept working on the Senju Taijutsu style even after leaving Renjuro's squad, and his skill with the seals is very promising too." Though seeing his performance, it doesn't look like it's due to his talent in Fuin Jutsu and is instead due to the amount of practice he has. He took a look at Fujin's face again and wondered, how long does he use the shadow clones to practice seals? He sighed internally and thought, though he becomes very greedy when he wants something, his work ethic is admirable. It is comparable to my 3 students and Minato when they were young. In terms of Fuin Jutsu, he is already superior to what my 3 students were when they were his age. Only Minato did better, but he had Kushina's help, which not only made his path simpler but also gave him a lot of motivation to become a Fuin Jutsu Grandmaster, and unlike those 4, Fujin has done it while staying hidden in the ambo and keeping his skills a secret. To be able to push himself without having a friend to push him, or having the common people and other ninjas sing his praises is remarkable. It looks like my previous analysis of him becoming capable of leading Konoha's darkness was on point, while Hiruzen's clone was analyzing Fujin. Fujin made rapid progress. The size of the seal was finally reduced by so much that Fujin couldn't see it. However, he was very much aware of where the seal was. Hiruzen's clone observed it as well and said, "Good work. You have succeeded on your first try. Can you feel where the seal imprint is?" Fujin nodded. The clone continued, "Good, I'm sure you can sense it very clearly, but the reason for this is that this is the only seal imprint you have created. Once you create hundreds or even thousands of seal imprints, sensing every seal individually becomes very difficult. As for remembering their locations, that is difficult as well. While you may remember the seals that you use regularly, you will struggle with the seals that rarely get used. That's why I instructed you to not imprint too many seals right now." Internally, Hiruzen sighed and thought, seeing the crazy work he has done with his house, I have no doubts that he will create hundreds of imprints on his body if I don't stop him. He turned his head to his left and gazed towards Fujin's house, which was just outside the training grounds, and thought, 3 years ago, that house had more than 2,500 seals. Its number has been steadily increasing since then. Right now, there are so many seals that even I can't see them all. Despite being better at Fuin Jutsu, the quantity of the seals is so much that I couldn't keep track after the number crossed 5,000 as even I can't see through all of them. Chapter 363 Another base. Fujin noticed Hiruzen's clone's gaze, and a wry smile appeared on his face. He realized. So that's why he keeps saying that again and again. He isn't wrong though. This method, though complicated, is still very easy to implement. If I didn't know that it would get complicated at a later stage, I would be tempted to do just that. Fujin replied, "All right, I'll limit the number of seal imprints to just the essential seals. I have a question though, since I created the imprint on my right hand. Doesn't that mean that I can use this seal quickly with just my right hand? So do I need to create the same imprint on my left arm as well?" Hiruzen's clone answered, "If you want to, then yes, but it's pointless to do that for a seal like the chakra suppression seal. This seal merely suppresses your enemy's chakra. There are many other seals that offer similar or even better effects, like the self-cursing seal, which paralyzes your opponent. This is another reason why I suggested you start with these 2 seals. You can use the chakra suppression seal with your right hand and the self-cursing seal with your left. If you feel like a seal is very important and irreplaceable, then feel free to create imprints on both your hands." Fujin nodded and said, "All right, I'll keep that in mind." Another question, does the seal have to be in between the chakra points that release the chakra? I was thinking about imprinting a few stealth seals on my body, perhaps barrier seals as well. That way, I could activate them instantly and gain an advantage, be it in stealth or defense. Hiruzen's clone answered, "Well, seals don't need to be imprinted between the chakra points. But the closer they are to the right chakra points, the faster you'll be able to activate them, and the lesser the chance of any of them failing. Since your main concern was speed, placing them in between the chakra points is the most reliable method. As for seals like stealth, hardness, barrier and other similar utility seals, having them on your clothes like you have now is more than sufficient. There is no need to create imprints for them." Fujin thought for a bit and decided, "Yeah, you're right. Doubling them up won't help a lot. If someone is strong enough to deal with those seals on my clothes, having those seals on my body might not help me much." Fujin recalled the time he was escaping from Roshi's tailed beast bomb. Just the mere blostwave destroyed his clothes, despite the high number of seals he carved on them. Only the iron skin jutsu managed to hold on for a few seconds. Hiruzen's clone replied, "Good analysis. Let's start creating the imprint for the self-cursing seal. Though it is Juin Jutsu, its process is almost completely similar to that of Fuin Jutsu." He began guiding Fujin once again, who absorbed all his teachings in no time. An hour later, Fujin completed imprinting the self-cursing seal on his left palm. Fujin observed it and thought, no wonder so few use Fuin Jutsu in battle despite there being so many seal masters. Without completing this step, it is very difficult to use seals in combat. Hiruzen's clone said, "You have learnt the way to create imprints for both Fuin Jutsu and Juin Jutsu. I will leave the work of imprinting the remaining seals to you. Just remember my warnings. If you face any confusion or have any doubts, you can come and see me." Fujin nodded and said, "Thank you, Grandpa, I will." The clone smiled and dispelled himself. In his office, Hiruzen, who had already completed his work, received the memories. He sighed and thought, Fortunately, everything went well. I just hope that I don't end up regretting that last sentence. Hiruzen left his office and returned to his home to sleep. As for Fujin, he still had 3 more days for the soldier pill to run out. He sat in the training ground while analyzing. What do I do now? Should I begin working on creating the imprint for the 4-symbol seal? Should I make imprints for a few more important seals? Or should I just focus on learning the remaining seals? After analyzing for a while, Fujin concluded, creating an imprint for the 4-symbol seals might take a longer time. It's probably why Hiruzen didn't want to teach me that. While the imprints of some simpler seals will take a lesser time, they will be a waste. Imprinting seals need a high amount of concentration and not a lot of chakra, though I could create shadow clones to train. If one pops and sends me the memories, I will fail in creating an imprint. For now, I'll continue with learning the remaining seals while I train vacuum jutsus. Once I run low on chakra, instead of meditating in the training rooms, I'll begin imprinting seals. However, I need to decide which seals I should imprint. Sigh, that will take a long time as well considering the insane number of seals I have learnt over the last year. Fujin got up, went back to his house and entered the basement. He created 80 shadow clones with 1% chakra each so that they could continue working on the remaining seals. Though he had learnt the most complicated sealing section of the library, he still had a few more top-level seals to learn, like the 5-element seal, 5 elements unseal, evil sealing method, and iron armor seal. His clones immediately began working on the 5-element seal. Thanks to having already worked on the 4-symbol seal, their progress was much smoother. As for Fujin, he sat down in the basement and began analyzing which seals to imprint while waiting for his chakra to recover. For the next hour, Fujin recalled and analyzed all the seals he had learnt over the past few years. A complicated expression appeared on his face as he let out a sigh. He thought, though I have learnt thousands of seals, the seals I can use directly in battle are almost non-existent. Hiruzen knew what he was doing when he asked me to create imprints for these 2 seals. Apart from the 4-symbol seal, none will be as effective as these 2. The issue is that though many seals are very good, they are designed to fulfill just one purpose. Though they are useful in one way or another, they aren't so useful in battle. Well, I can use them by becoming creative. Like say storing a lot of one element in element-specific storage seals, their effect in battle would be equivalent to just rank D jutsus, and I can't supercharge them. And in almost all cases, I can just inscribe those seals on my clothes and activate them when needed. There isn't much reason to create imprints, so what do I do? Fujin fell into deep thought. After a few minutes, he decided, though my main reason for learning Fuin Jutsu was for the tailed beasts and the flying thunder god technique, it will be a shame if that's all it is good for after spending such a long time learning it. Though I can still use it to set up traps or create defensive bases like this house, it still isn't good enough. There is only one way to make my knowledge implementable in battle, a very simple way. I need to create seals that I can use during battle. Of course, creating entirely new seals would be a very difficult and time-consuming task. It won't be worth it as the chances of success will be low. What I need to do is use the knowledge of my current seals to create complex seals that contain several of those seals and replicate their effects at the same time. Only such combinations of seals could be of some help in battle. Though this can be complicated as well, fortunately, I already have 2 good ideas. Hopefully, I'll get more in the future. For now, I'll create imprints for the 2 seals that might be of some help to me. While Fujin became busy with learning more Fuin Jutsu seals, creating seal imprints and perfecting vacuum gatling, the Konoha's army, which had stayed on the borders with the land of Waterfall for over a month, began withdrawing during the past month. The Konoha ninjas had created a large and permanent base on the border with the land of Waterfall. Though the majority of the ninjas withdrew, 100 ninjas, under the leadership of a veteran Junin from the Nara clan, stayed behind. This base served 2 purposes. The first one was that it acted as a forward base. If Igawatga took any action in the land of Waterfall, or even in the land of Grass, the ninjas from this base could act as a vanguard and slow them down while cooperating with Kuza and Taki. Secondly, it also acted as a mission center for missions coming from the land of Waterfall. Thanks to the Konoha ninjas being stationed directly on their borders, their location was closer than Takigonka for some of the citizens in the land of Waterfall, so it would bring in more mission revenue from the land of Waterfall. Now, in addition to the land of tea and the land of noodles, Konoha had a forward base alongside the border with the land of Waterfalls as well. Not only were those countries not offended by it, but they requested for these bases to be created and even paid Konoha to keep them running. Chapter 364 Exposed in the Hokage's office. Hirizen was sitting in his chair while reading something. He had a complicated expression on his face. Even though he expected Onoki to do this, when it truly happened, he couldn't help but feel a bit gloomy. After a couple of minutes, he exhaled the smoke and said softly, "Bring Fujin here. He should be in training ground 23. Immediately, an amber guard disappeared from the room. Fujin, who was training his vacuum gatling, stopped because he sensed a ninja entering the training ground. After getting the messenger, he left to see Hirizen. He entered the office and before he could ask anything, Hirizen pushed forward the book on his desk and said, "Take a look at this." Fujin picked up the book while muttering, "Bingo book." As soon as his eyes landed on the page Hirizen had opened, his eyes widened. He sighed and muttered, "Iwa finally decided to do this." Hirizen nodded. Iwa had increased Fujin's bounty from 20 million ryo to 50 million ryo. Surprisingly, his summon and Fuin jutsu skills weren't mentioned in the report, but they labeled him as the spectral swordsman. Fujin said, "Exposing this identity will cause a lot of trouble. I have killed way too many people in the last 3 years." Hirizen replied, "Yes, it will be a diplomatic disaster. To avoid this, you won't ever accept this title." Fujin nodded and said, "That goes without saying. But I doubt the neighboring countries will accept that so easily." Hirizen replied, "It doesn't matter. Iwa can give no proof, I can just deny everything they say. And considering the recent movements in the other 4 major villages, these smaller countries don't want any trouble with Konoha. They can only accept their losses and move on. But they might try something against you when you are on missions, be it for revenge or the 50 million ryo. There are a few bounty hunters as well who would be tempted." Fujin replied, "Yeah, I will be careful. But why didn't you mention all my details?" Hirizen chuckled and answered, "They want others to suffer losses against you just like they did." Fujin was surprised. He thought, "That's smart, and so fucking shameless, irrespective of whether I'm dealt with or if I deal with the attackers. They will benefit." Hirizen understood what Fujin was thinking about and said, "It doesn't matter what they are scheming. Just ensure that you don't fall prey to any more traps." Fujin nodded and said, "Yes, I won't. Thanks for the warning. I have another question though. Did you find out if anything was fishy in the previous incident?" Since there were amber guards in the room, Fujin was vague about the question. Hirizen understood and answered, "It wasn't anyone from the village. Shikaku and I concluded that they set a trap for any top-level ninja we sent. Though you might have been their primary target. Regardless, you were just the unlucky one. As for your identity, that should be due to the previous information about you in the bingo book." Fujin thought, "That's just as I predicted. Oh well, I'll just need to be more careful in the future. I can't take the lazy route." He placed the bingo book back on the desk and said, "All right, thanks for the information, Grandpa. I'll return to training." Hirizen nodded and saw Fujin leave. He looked back at the bingo book and thought, 50 million ryo, the same amount as Kakashi. Looks like Onoki sees the same potential in him as he does in Kakashi. He closed the book and continued working. As for Fujin, he wasn't very worried. While walking back to his training ground, he thought, "I had expected such a thing to happen. In fact, I am sure that a few schemes that are several times worse than this are already cooking behind the scenes. I just have to be more careful to avoid falling for such schemes, and be strong and resourceful enough to destroy those schemes if I get caught up." Unperturbed, Fujin continued his training. However, many influential people paid great importance to this news. On an obscure island in the middle of nowhere, a camp containing more than 500 ninjas existed. In the central tent in this camp, a lady with long auburn hair sat while reading the bingo book. Her eyes showed a glint of interest in what she was reading. A smile appeared on her face and she said, "He is very good at bluffing. Since he is Renjiro's student, it was unlikely that he would have carried out the threat he made when we met." Io, who was standing next to her, said, "We benefited heavily from the information he shared, so it doesn't matter much. Still, he is merely 14 years old. I didn't expect him to be so young." Mai nodded and said, "Yeah, he is already as strong as me, if he successfully keeps growing for another decade. Konoha will once again have a fearsome rank S ninja. No wonder such a bounty was placed on his head. I'm sure that whoever placed the bounty is scheming a lot in the background." I thought for a few seconds and said, "If he has such a potential, should we try to kill him? If a second Minato appears in Konoha, then we won't be able to defend in a war against Konoha." Mai shook her head and said, "No, that would be a big mistake. Since the third Hokage sent him to meet me with the secret information, it should mean that he is hoping for an alliance in the future. If it does happen, then I will have to negotiate with this boy. Those negotiations won't be easy if we try to kill him and fail, not to mention, Kumo will do everything they can to eliminate him considering that he specializes in wind nature manipulation. Besides, I doubt all his skills are mentioned in the bingo book. Even if they are all, killing him will still be a very costly affair. But if the Mizukage's faction wants to take him out, then we could benefit heavily, ask our spies to spread out rumors. There is a lot of hatred in the Mizukage faction for the spectral swordsman due to how many of their fake rogue ninjas he killed. Let them try to fight him and lose their elites. Oh nodded and got to work. Sitting in his office, Rasa had a thoughtful expression on his face as he read Fujin's information for the umpteenth time. A frown appeared on his face as he thought. I remember Igawaka sending information regarding him and speculating that he was the troublemaker. This sudden increase in his bounty should be Iwa's work. But is he worthy of such a bounty, or does Iwa hate him for some reason? He fell into deep thought. After a few minutes he shook his head and concluded, regardless of whether he is worthy or not, I can't overlook him. For Iwa to be so troubled, he should at least be at the elite Junin level, and at such a young age too, not to mention. His skills is too similar to the culprit who created so much chaos in my country. It doesn't matter if it was the copy ninja, or him, I need to eliminate him if I get the chance. Kumo and Iwa leadership didn't have much reaction towards this news for obvious reasons. However, the information caused a lot of chaos in the minor villages that were allied with Konoha. Their leaders immediately called for council meetings and sent a scroll to Hiruzen asking for an explanation. The people who took this news seriously weren't limited to other countries. In an office under the Konoha, Danzo sat with a thoughtful face as he read Fujin's bounty and information. He thought, the boy asked Hiruzen for less than 4 years ago has already reached this stage. No wonder Hiruzen refused to tell us who the spectral swordsman was, no matter how many times I asked him. Danzo was genuinely surprised. However, he curbed his surprise and wondered, who exposed him, and who did he offend to get such a huge bounty? Danzo thought about the recent events and realized, recently, Igawaka created a mess in the land of Waterfall. Hiruzen didn't tell me or the other elders what happened, but according to my information, one of our ambush squads clashed with Iwa there, so it should be his squad. But why would that make Iwa so alarmy? Danzo's left eye widened as he recalled, wait. Round half a year ago, the Four-Tails Jinwekaric Roshi went on a rampage in the Land of Grass. Information regarding that incident was buried as well. I thought we benefited only due to Iwa's folly, but if I assume that Roshi clashed with him, then it would make sense for Kuza to trust Konoha so much and for Iwa to attach so much importance to him. But, can Fujin go up against Roshi? Danzo looked at his bounty, and a frown appeared on his face. He thought, no wonder Ila put up such a huge bounty. He must have survived against Roshi, and they probably set up a trap for him in the Land of Waterfall. I should have been more forceful and inducted him in the route. Such a talent will now be corrupted by Hiruzen's naive thoughts, but this can be an opportunity as well. Danzo entered into deep thought. He analyzed, for an ambo, maintaining their disguise is the most important. If their identity is leaked, then everyone who they targeted and their families will try to get back at them. Hiruzen has failed him by failing to protect his identity. I can use this to try and recruit him. In addition, the spectral swordsman is known to be very ruthless and efficient. His method seems to be very similar to mine. I could try to influence him with my ideology as well. He looked at a root ninja in his office and instructed, call the 2 elders here. Due to his analysis, Danzo was upbeat about his chances of recruiting Fujin. However, if he was to know that Hiruzen was planning to pass the route to Fujin in the future, one would wonder what Danzo's expression would be. Chapter 365 A Casual Spar. The people surprised by this bounty weren't limited to just village leaders. Akimichi chose us off Fujin's bounty while looking through the new bingo book. I thought, such a high bounty. No wonder Lord Hokage wants to nurture him. But I still don't understand why he wants to make someone this talented a negotiator. Yamanaka Iniachi thought while looking at Fujin's information. So this is the boy that has been giving Shikaka sleepless nights. Fumito is on his squad. I'll ask him to improve his relationship. Hyuga Haishi analyzed. So this is the boy pushing Hoka to continuously become stronger. I hadn't paid much attention to him earlier. But if someone like him is pushing Hoka, then it will be very beneficial for Hoka. A look of surprise appeared on Inyuzu Katsume's face as she thought. I remember how dedicated he was to training during the Chunin exam. I knew he'd become strong. But I never imagined he'd reach such a level so quickly. The other clan leaders had similar reactions. However, because they hadn't been in direct contact with Fujin, they had to look up for more information on him. Since not everyone checked the bingo book regularly, the ones other than the clan leaders didn't get to know about Fujin's bounty immediately. But as the word about this matter, almost everyone in Konoha became aware of another talented youngster rising through their ranks. Of course, the one who was the most proud was Rinjuro. A smile formed on his face as he muttered, "It looks like I might not be able to keep up with him anymore." He looked at the sky and wondered, is this a sign for me to retire and leave active duty? Fujin was unaware of the fame he was gaining in his village. However, even if he had known, he wasn't in a state to think about it. The effect of the soldier pill had run out and he was in a deep sleep as his body and mind were completely exhausted. He rested for a couple of days before continuing his morning routine. To push himself to his limits, he started to use his training seal at 100% capacity for the duration of the training. After the training, he sat with his back against a tree while breathing heavily. He thought, 100% capacity is too much to handle with that intense workout. I should go at 92% from tomorrow and slowly increase it to 100% in a month. Fujin took a while to catch his breath. On recovering, he analyzed. In the last 3 days before the pill ran out of energy, I managed to create imprints for all the seals that I decided on. And my clones managed to learn both, the 5 elements seal and 5 elements unseal. I will next create imprints for these two. Their complexity level is much higher than the other seals I imprinted. Once I manage to create imprints for them, I'll begin working on the 4 symbol seals imprint. My vacuum gatling is also at a usable level now. Its speed is around 71% of my vacuum bullet, and I can fire them at an angle of up to 45. In terms of firing rate, I can fire 4 rounds in a second and 10 in 3 seconds. Spending more time on improving any of these aspects would be pointless. Over the next few months, as I become more used to this jutsu, its speed should increase to around 90% of the vacuum bullet, and the angle should increase to 60. The firing rate should also increase to 5 rounds in a second. I only need to train one more thing with the vacuum gatling. After I'm done with it, I'll begin working on an AI vacuum jutsu. But these can wait for some time. I need to do something more important today. Fujin kept resting until he had completely recovered and then got up and began moving towards another training ground. He thought, I hope this goes well. If possible, I would love to explore this route further as well. Maybe not to the limit, but close to that point. Fujin disappeared from his spot and moved at a rapid speed using body flicker. In one of the many training grounds in Konoha, a voice could be heard reverberating among the trees. 894, 895, 896, 897, 898, 899. Suddenly, the person stopped and looked up. After a moment, he continued doing his push-ups and asked enthusiastically, Fujin, how have you been? Fujin replied, doing well, Guy-san. How about you? Guy replied with the same enthusiasm. Never been better. Why are you here? Also just call me Guy. Fujin, sure, I need your help. My taijutsu skills are growing rusty, and I was wondering whether you'd be up for some sparring. Guy said, so you want to spar? All right, just give me a few minutes. 932, 933, 934, 935, 936, 937. Fujin watched with a deadpan expression as Guy doubled his speed of doing push-ups. He sighed internally. As expected, Fujin moved away and began stretching his muscles until Guy was done. In less than a minute, Guy shouted, 1000. He got up and said, all right, let's fight now. Fujin nodded and took his stance. A smile appeared on his face as he felt a sudden surge of excitement. He thought, Might Guy, though I have fought a lot of exciting battles, be it against Kakuzuha's Darui Roshi or Kitsuchi, and have seen someone like Hiruzen in action, no one comes close to this beast in terms of real strength, despite it being over a decade. Fujin couldn't help but recall the scene of Uchiha Madara declaring Guy as the strongest in taijutsu. Guy shouted, here I come, let the power of youth explode. Without further ado, Guy burst forward like a whirlwind at an incredible speed. At the same time, Fujin moved forward as well and unleashed a punch. Their fists clashed, producing a loud sound and a minute shockwave. A look of surprise appeared on Guy's face. It soon turned into a grin as he exclaimed, good, I can feel the power of youth coursing through your body. A grin appeared on Fujin's face as well while he said, Might Guy, I have heard that you are the greatest taijutsu master in our village. A shame that I couldn't spar with you until now. I really hope you live up to your reputation because I haven't felt so excited about a fight in a long time. Fujin immediately unleashed a barrage of punches and kicks relentlessly. forcing Guy on a back foot. Guy blocked and dodged his attacks, and in a few seconds began counterattacking. The two exchanged blows without a break. As the fight continued, Fujin slowly started getting overwhelmed. He parried Guy's kick while thinking, such crazy raw power and speed. His experience in taijutsu is far superior to mine as well. I haven't seen anyone apart from Hiruzen move this fast, and we aren't yet using chakra to enhance our power and speed. Though Guy was better and was overwhelming Fujin. Fujin could still hold on. Since he was the one to request a taijutsu spar, Fujin refrained from using chakra to enhance himself to get an advantage. If someone were to see this fight, they would be shocked. Both Fujin and Guy moved at such a tremendous speed that neither could be seen by an untrained eye. Only the sounds of their fists and legs clashing could be heard. Occasionally, some part of the ground would blow up, or a tree or two would be broken. After 5 minutes of such intense combat, both fighters finally stopped and stood around 10 meters apart while facing each other. Fujin's breathing was slightly rough, a few bruises could be seen on his arms and legs. However, none were serious. In comparison, Guy didn't have any injuries on his body. His breathing, though slightly heavier, seemed normal as well. Guy praised, "Excellent. Fujin, you truly embody the spirit of youth." Fujin replied, "Thanks, Guy. Your reputation doesn't do you justice." A grin appeared on his face as chakra began flowing around his body. He asked, "I wonder if you'd like to get serious now." Guy observed Fujin and said, "The Senju Taijutsu style good. Other than Lady Tsunoide, I haven't seen any other ninja from the Senju clan exerting more chakra than you." Guy took his fighting stance. Fujin immediately became extremely serious. He immediately concentrated chakra in his eyes. He could sense an intense chakra being radiated from Guy. It wasn't as strong as his chakra in quantity, but it felt far more intense. Sweat dripped down Fujin's forehead as he observed Guy's application of chakra. He could only think, this guy. Chapter 366 Strong Fist Style. Looking at the serious look on Fujin's face and his glowing eyes, Guy said, "My fighting style is called the Strong Fist Style. Unlike the Senju Taijutsu style, which uses chakra to just enhance the power behind the punch or the kick, this method enhances the entire body. Though it lacks explosive strength, its impact is much higher." Fujin was still surprised. He replied, "I see," he thought. "I should have expected his fighting method to not be merely taijutsu. His chakra is completely infused in his body. There is no leakage. But this method is different from just concentrating chakra in one part of the body. Infusing chakra directly into the body puts intense pressure on muscles and the chakra network itself. I can understand infusing chakra in limbs. I should be able to do that as well. Though it might be a bit painful. But infusing chakra in vital organs is very risky. Is his chakra control and medical knowledge so good that he is so confident in not damaging himself? But that doesn't sound like Guy at all." Before he could analyze further, Guy made a move. He burst forward like a bullet, and within the blink of an eye, he had reached Fujin. Fujin's eyes widened as he thought, so fast. He immediately clenched his right fist and concentrated a lot of chakra on it and punched at the incoming fist. The two fists collided, causing a strong shockwave to spread from the impact. Fujin and Guy immediately jumped back and created some distance between themselves. Fujin shook his right hand and complained, "What is your fist made of? I felt like I was hitting iron." Guy chuckled, "You aren't bad yourself. Get ready, I'm about to be serious." He moved towards Fujin, and both exchanged a flurry of punches and kicks once again. Suddenly, Guy took a step back and began spinning while shouting "Severe Leaf Hurricane." He unleashed a series of kicks, targeting Fujin's legs, waist and head in a random pattern. However, Fujin managed to block or dodge every kick. Suddenly, Guy jumped in the air and attacked Fujin with a heel drop. Fujin immediately moved out of the way and retreated. As he expected, as soon as Guy's kick landed on the ground, rocks were sent flying everywhere around him. Guy ignored those rocks and attacked Fujin again. As the two of them fought, Fujin analyzed Guy's abilities. He thought, in terms of speed, he is just barely slower than Hiruzen. The only way I could be faster than him is if I use Assassin's Rush Jutsu. So if he uses the inner gates, I doubt Assassin's Rush Jutsu would be able to keep up. Not to mention, Assassin's Rush only provides a linear speed boost. That said, though he is faster, I can still keep up and defend myself, even if just barely. One mistake and I'll take a bad punch or a kick. I'm very intrigued about this strong fist style though. His punches and kicks are enhanced with chakra, but not the same degree of chakra as the Senju Taijutsu style. I can concentrate far more chakra in my fists and legs than him. On the flip side, The Senju Taijutsu style consumes chakra at a much higher rate, and it doesn't buff speed or defenses like the strong fist style. Still, despite seeing it for a considerable amount of time, Fujin could still not wrap his head around one fact. He cursed. I still can't believe how fucking good Guy's chakra control is. Isn't he supposed to be an untalented ninja who reached the top with nothing but hard work and determination? This changes my entire understanding of this world. Of course, Fujin would never say that out loud. Fujin and Guy kept going at each other relentlessly for over 2 hours before finally stopping. Fujin sat on the ground while breathing heavily while Guy sat on a broken tree while taking deep breaths as well. Guy said, "You are good. No one other than Kakashi gives me such an intense fight." "I see why you receive such a huge bounty." Fujin was surprised to hear that. He asked, "You know about my bounty?" Guy replied, "How could I not? It's the talk of the village as of now. Everyone is curious about you." Guy put on his trademark smile and gave Fujin a thumbs up as he said enthusiastically, "Seeing someone as young as you getting such a high bounty makes the youth in me explode." Fujin watched Guy and sighed in relief internally, while thinking, "Lucky, I thought he might begin shedding tears and summon a sunset right at noon." Fujin got up and said, "I'm more impressed by you, Guy. Is it fine if I ask some questions about your strong fist style?" Guy replied, "Ask. I can't deny the request of someone so youthful." Fujin asked, "How can you infuse chakra in your entire body? Doesn't it put a strain on your muscles, chakra network and even your internal organs?" Guy answered, "It's simple. The answer is hard work." Fujin was confused. He asked, "What do you mean?" Guy put up his trademark smile again and answered, "You just have to keep training day in and day out until the chakra infuses naturally in your body." Fujin's left eyebrow twitched. He asked, "Do you mean that you don't do that via chakra control?" Guy replied, "No, that's too complicated." He gave Fujin a thumbs up again and said, "You just need to keep training until that happens naturally. There is no other way. At least none that I know of." Fujin sighed internally and thought, "I should have known. Top-tier chakra control and medical knowledge just don't match Guy's personality." He became serious as he analyzed. "Still, though, the method is strange and unconventional. I don't think it will be risky. In fact, I have a feeling that this might be a prerequisite for learning the 8 inner gates, or at the very least, being able to strengthen the body this way could help in improving the ability to sustain the 8 inner gates. The reason why I don't think this is risky is due to how often Guy might be using it. In the future, Lee would master this easily too, and it's possible that Might Dewey knew this as well, or perhaps he knew something similar and Guy improved upon it." Guy saw Fujin in a deep thought and asked, "What are you thinking about?" Fujin said, "I have been feeling like my taijutsu has been stuck at the same level for a couple of years. I was wondering whether you could help me develop a new training plan for myself." Guy raised his thumb again and replied with his trademark smile, "You can count on me," Fujin said. "Also, one of the reasons why my taijutsu was stuck was due to a lack of fights, as I prefer using ninjutsu in combat. So, can you please spar with me on a regular basis?" A grin formed on his face as Fujin added, "I have a feeling that I'll improve rapidly if I keep sparring with you like we did today." Guy grinned as well and said enthusiastically, "Of course, I can already see us unleashing our youthfulness in our spars. Do you have any other requests?" A smile formed on Fujin's face. He said, "Just one more thing. How much did you hold back against me today?" A look of surprise appeared on Guy's face. However, it quickly turned into a smile. He said, "I am surprised you noticed." Though Fujin had said that his taijutsu was growing rusty, he was still very confident in his taijutsu. He was confident in winning even against the Hyuga elites in taijutsu. The number of ninjas who could defeat him in taijutsu was quite low. However, despite his confidence, Fujin was one of the few who knew how insanely strong Guy was. In fact, even the ones who knew Guy's strength didn't know how strong Guy could be for sure. In fact, Fujin knew about it more than even Guy himself did. In addition, unlike Fujin, who trained in every aspect, Guy focused entirely on his taijutsu. Despite his confidence, Fujin clearly knew that he was far inferior to Guy in taijutsu. Guy answered, "Not much, my speed and power are as you saw. I just pulled a few punches to not injure you," Fujin thought. "I see, he didn't consider the 8 inner gates." Fujin replied, "All right, thank you. Hopefully you won't have to hold back against me soon. Let's start creating a training plan." Fujin and Guy began discussing Fujin's current body training plan and began creating a new one. Fujin's goal for this new training plan was to infuse the chakra in his body just like how Guy could. Chapter 367 Deadly Training and a New Danger. Fujin and Guy discussed the training plan for quite some time. It wasn't like when Fujin asked Genki or Renjuro to help with training plans. Back then, his knowledge was too low and he merely followed the training plans they created with little input from him. But now Fujin was quite experienced as well. In addition, his relationship with Guy was more like a colleague rather than a teacher-student relationship, so both were quite casual. After around half an hour, the plan was finalized. Fujin thanked Guy and took his leave. As he left the training ground, Fujin sighed involuntarily and thought, what a weird exchange. He recalled Guy's first words. After asking for Guy's help, Guy immediately created a complete training plan and explained it to Fujin with extreme enthusiasm. His words left Fujin completely speechless. Guy had created a training schedule that started at 5 am and went on till 11 pm with extremely small breaks sprinkled in between for eating. In addition, some of the training involved embarrassing tasks, like walking around Konoha on his hands. Fujin thought, he is even more crazy than I remember. Training in such a manner is very harmful to the body, not to mention, it is useless for anyone who doesn't want to abandon ninjutsu and genjutsu. More than half the time we spent discussing it was to cut the training time from 18 hours to 4 hours. A good amount of the remaining time was spent on removing the embarrassing exercises, while I don't mind some strangers laughing if I can benefit heavily. Those exercises don't provide any significant benefit. I guess he does it to improve his mental fortitude and to keep himself humble or grounded. But that isn't an issue for me. Fujin shook his head and thought, all the weirdness aside, the interaction went quite similarly to how I imagined it would. His nature is as helpful and straightforward as I remember, but he definitely isn't as simple or naive as he was in the series. No, even in the series, though he acted as a fool, I didn't consider him as one. Though he wasn't the sharpest, he was still very mature, stable and decently smart, but in this treacherous world, he'd be even more smart. Regardless, since he has decided to help me, I don't need to worry much about it. This method of training will be very effective. Since my body is already very strong, I won't need a long time before I can replicate this. In maybe 3 to 4 months, I should be able to infuse chakra throughout my body, and unlike Kai, I can combine the strong fist style with the Senju taijutsu style. As long as I ignore the 8 inner gates, my taijutsu could surpass his level if I devote the majority of my time to it. Sadly, the gains won't be worth it, as what makes Guy stand out is his skill with the 8 inner gates. I wonder if he'd be willing to teach me the 8 inner gates. Fujin analyzed for a bit and concluded, asking for it right away will be foolish. Let me first master the chakra infusion. In that time, I can improve my relationship with Guy considerably with regular spars. It'll be best if he proposes this idea himself. If not, I can ask him when I feel it will be appropriate. If he refuses, I can only ask Hiruzen whether Konoha has this forbidden method. Hiruzen should know about it, considering that Madara was aware of this technique. So Might Due shouldn't be its creator. Though I'm not interested in the 8th gate, the ones before that will be very helpful. The ability to open the 2nd gate is the one I want the most. To be able to get a second chance in the middle of a fight is invaluable at the top level. Even if my enemy is too strong for me, I can at least get a second chance at running away from the 3rd gate onwards. If I can use that excess chakra to supercharge my ninjutsu while amplifying my taijutsu, it would instantly take me to the peak among the rank is ninjas for that duration. However, that might not be easy considering that there is no precedent for it. Oh well, I'll leave this matter for later. Fujin flickered towards Yakiniko as he remembered another matter. He thought, Guy said that my name is getting well known due to the bounty. I was afraid that something like this would happen. Fame isn't good. Hiruzen, Shikaku and Eagle have done a great job in keeping my identity under wraps until now. Even the elders didn't know about my identity. This sudden fame will probably pull me into this village's political mess sooner than I wanted to. I need to be more alert from now on. It was a lucky break that I learnt seal imprints and developed a cool idea. It happens to help me in this regard. Hee. I wonder who will be making the first move against me. Though Fujin preferred dealing with matters with a swing of his sword, he didn't mind clashing with just intelligence either. Suna was still suffering due to the schemes he set in the process almost a year ago. He had also managed to get away safely from a terrible position against Mai with just a verbal exchange. Despite not wishing for it, he was looking forward to dipping his hands into Konoha's internal mess. After having lunch, Fujin returned to Training Ground 23. He created a dozen shadow clones to think about how to create a wide-range vacuum jutsu. As for his main body, he decided to practice the training plan he had finalized after a long discussion with Guy. Fujin stretched his body while muttering, "We packed an 18-hour workout session into 4 hours. I hope my body still stays in one piece after this. Fujin began the most intense workout session of his life until that moment. After a couple of hours, one of Fujin's shadow clones suddenly snapped his eyes open. He disappeared from his spot and flickered rapidly towards the border of the training ground. He landed on a spot and thought, "That's weird." I locked onto a couple of minute chakra signatures that suddenly appeared. However, it dissipated as soon as I locked onto it. Other ninjas entering his training ground happened every once in a while. In most cases, it'd be someone who wanted to visit Fujin. In some rare cases, it'd just be someone who was passing through. However, it was the first instance of someone disappearing after being sensed. The clone squinted his eyes as he noticed something on the ground. He bent down and picked up 2 dead bugs. He analyzed. These should be the source of the chakra. What was an Aburiti ninja doing here, and why did he kill his own bugs and run away? He spread out his chakra field, covering a circular area with a radius of 3 kilometers. Immediately, almost every high-level ninja in this area looked in the direction of Fujin's clone. Fujin's clone deactivated his chakra field and analyzed. I didn't find anyone hiding in nearby training grounds. Whoever it was should have mixed with the civilians and the ninjas. Regardless, why would the Aburami clan send a ninja to do something so fishy? He thought for a few seconds before shaking his head. A frown formed on his face as he concluded, "No, this isn't the style of the Aburami clan. It should be Shimura fucking Danzo. Why the hell is that bastard crawling out of the ground?" He took another look at the bugs and observed. These bugs aren't poisonous ones. Rather, they are the ones used for scouting and spying. He wants to collect my information. Knowing his record, he wants to either eliminate or recruit me. If it's the latter, I can handle him. But if it's the former... The frown on his face deepened. He thought, although I am confident in being able to go up against Danzo and even his remaining root ninjas in a fair fight, these bastards will never fight fair. In addition, though Hiruzen is extremely devious, he has a soft spot for Danzo. Even though taking the root from him might seem a big punishment, it is very tame considering that he killed a rank S ninja, caused another rank S to go rogue and was the main reason behind the massacre of Konoha's strongest clan. So even if Danzo makes a move against me, I can't count on Hiruzen to back me up, and I'll also need to be on guard against that freakish eye. Sigh, as I expected, fame is a pain in the ass. Danzo, I hope you don't make things difficult for me, else I don't care if Hiruzen gets offended. I should wait till I take the Flying Thunder God though. It shouldn't be an issue, as I doubt Danzo would make a move against me in a hurry. After completing his analysis, the clone clenched his fists. The dead bugs in his hand were cut into minute particles and cremated. A second later, he dispelled himself. Fujin was sweating heavily as he exerted his body to the max. Suddenly, his eyes widened as he received the clone's memories. His expression went back to normal, and a smile appeared on his face as he thought, "So you have decided to crawl out? It looks like things might not get boring even after I retire from the Ambu." Chapter 368 Failure. Fujin didn't bother thinking about Danzo anymore and focused on his training again. After 4 grueling hours of relentless training, Fujin's body felt like it had been pushed beyond its limit several times. His muscles burned with a searing intensity, and every breath he took was a laborious effort. With a deep, ragged exhale, he finally released the tight control he had maintained over his body. He collapsed backwards onto the training ground, his back making contact with the earth. Drops of sweat glistened on his forehead before trickling down. Mingling with the earth below, his chest heaved as he lay there, staring up at the sky. He muttered, "Finally done, what a fucking crazy training plan. And I have to put my body through this hell on a daily basis." Fujin closed his eyes and kept lying there, recovering both body and spirit. After around 5 minutes, Fujin finally got up. He stretched his sore muscles while thinking, "No wonder the 8 inner gates isn't popular. Only a maniac can put his body through this hell for years. Still, there is no doubt that this will be very beneficial for me. I should have gone to Guy right when Renjuro's training plan began losing effect. I should also make a new training seal. I will be comfortable with the maximum limit of this seal in less than a month with this training." Fujin dispelled his clones and received their memories. A look of surprise appeared on his face. He thought, "That's weird. None of my clones could think of a good AoE vacuum jutsus." He began walking home while analyzing. The only decent idea they came up with was using several vacuum jutsus while using the infinite breakthrough jutsu at the same time. It would affect a wide range, but it isn't the same. It is merely spamming the normal vacuum jutsus. Though it would appear as a similar effect, it won't be the case. Not only will there be a lot of gaps to dodge the attack, but it won't be stronger than my normal vacuum attacks either. I need to think of something better. Fujin freshened up and had dinner before calling it a day. Lying in his bed, Fujin wondered, and now what to do about Danzo. He stayed quiet for some time while recalling all the information he could about Danzo. He analyzed. From what I remember, Danzo stayed inactive since the Uchiha's massacre, until he put Sai on Naruto's squad. He didn't make a move during Konoha Crush or for the 5th Hokage either. While I can understand the former considering his actions during Pain's assault, the latter is very suspicious. Why didn't he try and claim the 5th Hokage's spot after Hiruzen died to his own student? Fujin analyzed for a while before concluding. The only reason I can think of is the fame and reputation of Jiraiya and Tsunade. Perhaps, even if he tried, the other council members would push for Jiraiya to take the seat. After all, in terms of fame and reputation, Jiraiya is in a whole different league than Kakashi. Even if he tried using Shusei's eye to influence the daimyo, everyone would become very suspicious of such a decision. So his secrets would be out and would be far more detrimental for him in the long run. Wait, now that I think about it, the Hokage's appointment needs a vote from Junins. Without a crisis created by Akatsuki and an opportunity to create and lead a shinobi alliance, he wouldn't be able to become the Hokage. No wonder he didn't fight for it. But since he is making a move now, there might have been a change I'm not aware of, or perhaps my existence is tempting him to make a move. Either way, he has the potential to create a lot of mess. Fujin was unaware of the fact that Hiruzen allowed Danzo to recruit talented orphans from the Land of Water into the route. Though the route was merely in the beginning stages of recruiting, and the recruits didn't add any immediate power to the route, it increased Danzo's hope. It also gave him an opportunity to exert some political influence in Konoha again. Fujin analyzed. If Danzo begins interfering, then he has the ability to change the future events. If he does that, I will lose a lot of my advantage needlessly, though he won't be able to affect Akatsuki's operations much. He could alter the future by interfering in Konoha's politics or worse, by interfering with Naruto and Sasuke. What to do? Fujin kept lying in his bed while thinking about the insane amount of complications that would occur if someone like Danzo began acting in a different manner than what he remembered. After a long while he let out a sigh and decided, the best case scenario will be if he doesn't interfere beyond a certain limit, but if he does, then I might need to interfere. Though killing him will be difficult and raise too many questions, I can cut off his arms by eliminating the few loyal root ninjas he has one by one. Without them, his ability to act will be severely restricted, and though Hiruzen has a soft spot, I doubt he'll give Danzo additional forces. He isn't that naive. But I can't use wind release. Even though I can remove the traces, Hiruzen and Eagle have too much information about me. They will become suspicious and begin keeping tabs on me. Fortunately, I still have a hidden card. Lightning sparks appeared on Fujin's body before disappearing. Though Fujin's lightning jutsus weren't as broken as his wind jutsus, they were still strong enough to take on a Junin. More importantly, they were backed by his fearsome speed and strength. Normal Junin-level root ninjas wouldn't stand a chance against him. Fujin analyzed. No one is aware of my skill in lightning release. To avoid any suspicions, I didn't visit the lightning training rooms. If I kill some root ninjas using lightning release, Danzo will suspect Kakashi. Since Kakashi wouldn't do something so drastic by his own will, he will suspect Hiruzen. If a conflict between the two happens, then that'll be for the best outcome. Fujin yawned and muttered. Enough planning for today. I'll have to wait to see what he does first. He closed his eyes and fell asleep within a minute. The training had drained him entirely. From the next day, Fujin followed this routine. He trained with the new training plan early in the morning. He would follow it up with a 3-hour-long taijutsu spar with Guy. After lunch, he would experiment with the ideas he had for an AoE vacuum jutsu. This continued for 5 more days until Guy said, "The power of youth overflows in you, Fujin. Unfortunately, I have to take a mission tomorrow." Fujin nodded and said, "Good luck, Guy. Let me know when you return. I am usually in training ground 23 or the large house next to it." Guy gave Fujin a thumbs up and said, "Definitely." Fujin took his leave. Guy's trademark smile faded away as Fujin left. He thought, "A Suzuki Fujin. I never thought that someone so talented in ninjutsu would be willing to undergo such a training regime for 6 days straight. His taijutsu is already better than Kakashi's if he doesn't use the Sharingan." His grin returned as he exclaimed, "A junior is pushing himself so much, I need to increase my training even more. Before I leave, I will do a week's training in only a day." He immediately dropped down and began doing push-ups at such a speed that his body looked blurry and left several afterimages. Fujin didn't bother Guy anymore. He had another issue to take care of. While eating in Ikirake, his mind was occupied by the issue he was being troubled with. He thought, "It's almost been a week since I started, but I still haven't had any success in creating an AoE vacuum jutsu. Though I could create the idea I had, its effect was much lower than what I wanted. I won't be able to pierce a Susanoo with this method. Unfortunately, I don't have any other good ideas. Creating a large enough vacuum core for an AI attack is not possible. Perhaps spamming vacuum cannon might be the only way to replicate Danzo's success against the Susanoo. I wonder how he does it." Unfortunately, no matter how hard Fujin thought, he couldn't come up with a decent idea. It came as a surprise to him considering how quickly he could create the other vacuum jutsus. The next day, after consuming the soldier pill, Fujin decided, there is no point in wasting a lot of time trying to figure this out. With vacuum gatling, vacuum blade and vacuum slash, that Awa army will be helpless against me, so I don't need to worry much about this. I will begin working on taking my wind release to the next level. Hopefully I'll find some inspiration as I work on it. Chapter 369 Wind Domain. Fujin was sitting on the training ground while waiting for his chakra to recover. His clones had continued working on the remaining seals. Fujin didn't bother visiting the training rooms because he was deep in thought. His mind was occupied with thinking about what he wanted to create. Once his chakra recovered, Fujin got up. He began emitting chakra into the air from every chakra point on his body. As soon as the chakra was released, it transformed into the wind and mixed with the surroundings. If a normal person saw, he wouldn't feel anything different. However, any ninja would immediately feel the high amount of chakra concentrated in the area. Fujin analyzed. Unlike the wind-style genjutsu, this can be easily detected, but doing what I have in my mind can't be done with that little amount of chakra. But it shouldn't be an issue. Even though I'm sacrificing stealth, it will be compensated by the abilities of this technique. Fujin focused his eyes on a branch of a tree in front of him. More accurately, he focused on the wind around the branch which had his chakra mixed in. In an instant, the wind attacked the branch. The winds caused the branch to sway. A few leaves fell, but no damage was inflicted to the branch. Fujin furrowed his eyebrows as he analyzed. This will take a lot of time. He closed his eyes and continued emitting more chakra in the surrounding area. As he did, he also focused all his attention on sensing his wind chakra that was mixed into the surroundings. After 5 minutes, he snapped his eyes open and exerted control on the chakra he had released. Immediately, winds began flowing around him. The branches of the trees around him began swaying in the wind, and a few leaves broke off. Fujin sighed and thought, "It's very difficult to exert control over this chakra. Making it sharper is even more difficult. Though my control over wind jutsu is normally very good, it is because I manipulate it however I want before it leaves my body. Even though I have some more control over jutsus like Blades of Wind and Infinite Breakthrough due to yin-yang manipulation, it still has more to do with what I do before I launch the jutsu. As I speculated, this will be a rather difficult technique to create." Memories regarding his idea flashed into his mind. Fujin thought, "It has been a long time since I wanted to create something like this. I first had the idea after seeing the rank E wind jutsus, but the idea was very vague back then, and I didn't have any idea of how to even start working towards it. That changed when I fought with Susumu. His application of wind release to cast genjutsu gave me an idea of how I could start. My idea is to emit chakra into my surrounding winds and control it. If it goes as I want it to, then I should be able to create extremely high-speed winds at will. I should also be able to make those winds extremely sharp. At a later stage, I should also be able to mix vacuum blades in this technique. Once it is completed, it will be akin to the wind variant of the Raikage's Cloak of Lightning. Though it won't buff my speed or physical defense and attack like the Cloak of Lightning, the entire area around me will be a death zone. I can use the winds to tear apart anyone who enters in the range of this technique. I can also use the winds to defend against ranged attacks, and though I'm not sure whether I can use this to buff my speed, this could potentially aid me in another way, that is, the power of flight." A glint appeared in Fujin's eyes. The ability to fly and to create such a domain around him were among the top abilities that he craved. He thought, considering the nature of this technique, it can't be called a jutsu. Instead, I will call this my wind domain. Once I master it, even Obito would be very wary of sneak attacking me in the middle of a battle. He can enter my domain, but he can't deactivate his intangibility while he is in it. Unfortunately, this technique will be very difficult to create. According to my calculations, I'll need at least a year of extreme training to make this technique workable. raising it to a level comparable to Raikage's Cloak of Lightning will need even more time. In addition, I will have to break this technique into several parts, as trying to directly master it in its entirety will be doing too much at the same time. Also, these parts would help me keep track of my progress. As for what these parts will be, Fujin chuckled as he thought. They would be the rank E jutsus in the library: Wind Levitation Jutsu, Projectile Control Jutsu, Wind Retrieving Jutsu, and the rank D Propelling Winds Jutsu will be ideal for creating this technique. It's just that instead of using my own chakra, I need to perform these jutsus with the chakra I have emitted into the surroundings. Of course, these alone won't be enough. They can improve my control, but won't help me much in attack. For that, I need to create blades of wind and later vacuum blades with the emitted chakra. In addition, I need to create a new jutsu. The jutsu will be the ninjutsu variant of wind-style genjutsu. While maintaining the stealth aspect, I want to form an attack with the wind chakra I have emitted. Since the chakra will be very low, I can only create one attack. One simple cut with sharpened winds at the neck. I will call it the silent cut jutsu. This will have two usages. The first one is obviously for assassination. The second is to use this to sneak attack anyone who detects my technique, stays a safe distance away, and is able to defend against me. Though I have a few more ideas, this should be enough for now. I'll begin my training. Fujin created 5 shadow clones. Fujin and his clones spread out around the training ground. Each of them emitted their chakra into the air and tried using it to use the wind retrieving jutsu. Fujin quickly became engrossed in his training. Though the jutsu had the potential to require a large amount of chakra, Fujin didn't have much mastery over it, so he and his clones only released as much chakra as they could control. Due to this, Fujin's chakra regenerated at a much faster rate than he and his clones could use. So apart from needing a break after dispelling and recreating the clones working on Fuin Jutsu, Fujin didn't need any other break. Fujin ignored everything else and continued his training. 3 days later, a ninja wearing a mask appeared in an underground tunnel. He walked towards a room and entered it. He knelt and respectfully said, "Danzo-sama." Danzo looked at him and said, "Torun, report your observations." Torun reported, "I tried keeping an eye on Suzuki Fujin for the last 10 days. For the first 6 days, he woke up at 4:30 am. He went to training ground 23 at 5 am. He stayed there until 10 am. From 10 am to 1 pm, he went to the training ground where Might Guy was at. He spent 3 hours there before going to have lunch in either Yakiniko at Kuraka or his house. He returned to the training ground 23 after lunch and spent another 4 to 6 hours there before going back to his house. On the 7th day, Guy had to go on a mission, so Fujin stayed in the training ground 23 until lunchtime. But in the last 3 days, he has stayed all the time in the training ground 23. He hasn't left for food or sleep. I believe he is using a soldier pill to train continuously." Danzo was surprised. He thought, so much training, is he preparing for something? Or is this how he always is? He asked, "What is he training in? And did you inspect his house?" Torun answered, "I planted some of my insects to spy on what he and Guy were doing." They both sparred for 3 hours straight on a daily basis. Fujin's taijutsu is very good. He uses the Senju taijutsu style. In a pure taijutsu fight, I don't think any root ninja will be a match for him. As for what he did in training ground 23, he took a pause before continuing. "I couldn't find out. He keeps his chakra field activated in the training ground all the time. I tried sending in some insects, but he detected them and even tried looking for me. I planted some bugs in the training ground in the night, but he could somehow find and kill all of them before he began doing whatever he was doing. So I have no idea what he does there." As for his home, sweat gathered behind Torun's mask before he could give an answer. Chapter 370 Limitless Applications of the Wind Domain. Danzo asked, "What about his house?" Torun answered, "Whenever Suzuki Fujin leaves his house, he puts a 5-seal barrier tag on the door. I managed to find 2 more tags within a day, but despite searching for a long time, my bugs couldn't find the 2 remaining tags around his house. I can't say for sure, but I think that there are a lot more seals on and around his house. I got a feeling that if I had gone to inspect myself instead of sending bugs, I would have been discovered even if Fujin wasn't there." Danzo was stunned. He began analyzing. Such carefulness while training and such protection for his house. Even the Uchiha clan wasn't so much on guard despite knowing that we could attack preemptively. What is he up to? Danzo became very suspicious of Fujin. No other Konoha ninja took so much effort to protect their secrets. The only one who did was Danzo himself. Danzo analyzed. There shouldn't be anything fishy in what he does in the training grounds. Hiruzen can inspect them anytime he wants to. However, his house might contain a lot of secrets. But why didn't Hiruzen look into it? Such behavior is even more brazen than what Orochimaru did. At the very least, he didn't do anything in his own house and created secret bases around the village. So why didn't Hiruzen look into it? Or could it be that he has given the boy his approval? Danzo analyzed for a few more minutes before concluding. I forgot that Suzuki Fujin is only 14 years old. What secrets can he hide, apart from some sessions to learn mystical palm? He has no record of any expertise in medical ninjutsu. Hiruzen is likely using that boy to bait me. The seal should have been placed when Hiruzen understood that it was inevitable for his identity to be leaked. Once I make a move, he will get a reason to take the orphans I just recruited. Danzo looked at Torun and instructed, don't spy on him continuously for now. Instead, you will spy on him for 2 days once every fortnight. Select the days randomly. Torun replied, I will, Danzo-sama. Torun left his office. Danzo watched him leave and thought, although this might be a trap, I can't stop spying on him. There is a lot about this boy that doesn't add up. To recruit him, I will need information about his personality, values, ideology and his abilities. I can then find a way to drive a wedge between Hiruzen and him. A frown formed on Danzo's face as Hiruzen's face appeared in his mind. He thought, Hiruzen is up to something. He is hiding a lot about this boy. Despite pushing him so much in the last meeting, he refused to tell us anything about the boy's abilities that wasn't already mentioned in the bingo book. Seeing how secretive he is, there should be a lot more to this boy. Unfortunately, Danzo had no way to know what was being hidden. He could only stay patient and wait for Torun to find something, though Fujin had an idea that Danzo's subordinates were likely spying on him. He didn't know who was doing the job. After the first mistake, Torun was extremely careful. He stayed long away and only sent scouting bugs to check on him. He avoided doing anything that could expose him. He didn't send his bugs when Fujin was inside the training ground and stopped planting bugs in the training ground during the night after Fujin got rid of them thrice. As a result, Torun managed to stay hidden. But as a consequence of such carefulness, he wasn't able to get any information about Fujin's abilities other than his taijutsu. He did collect some other data, like the restaurants Fujin preferred to visit, his schedule and similar miscellaneous information, which was important as well. However, Fujin was aware that there was no way of hiding such basic information about himself, so he didn't bother trying to hide them. Instead, he just raised his guard against any attempts to poison him, since Torun didn't expose himself again. Fujin stopped caring about him and continued his training. His progress with the wind domain was slow, but he made rapid improvements in taijutsu after Guy returned from his mission. However, his biggest gain was something else entirely. Fujin was sitting in his basement, his mind completely focused. His eyes were glued to his left arm, which was entirely covered in various symbols. Under Fujin's control, the symbols began rearranging themselves, forming a seal on his left arm. Fujin let out a sigh of relief. A smile appeared on his face as he muttered, 4-symbol seal imprint is done. He focused once again. The seal on his arm began moving to a point on his left palm. Within minutes, it completely disappeared. Fujin observed his hand and thought, finally I have a reliable method to deal with Jin Eucharis. However, for it to be successful, I'll need to use the seal before they transform into their tailed beast mode. Otherwise it might be very risky. However, I can't say for sure until I experiment. Experimenting on tailed beasts right now isn't possible, but I should try to experiment on other stronger beasts. Though the 4-symbol seal is mostly used for tailed beasts, there is no reason why it can't be used to seal other beings. The scene of the gigantic whirlpool appeared in Fujin's mind. He shook his head and analyzed. But unlike the tailed beasts, the other beasts can probably not be used as a chakra battery. The best way to use them would be a summoning contract. If they disagree or lack intelligence, then I can seal them with this seal and release them for rampaging around. They would serve as a good distraction. I also need to create the 8-trigram divination seal. That would require some experimentation as well. Once that is done, I can begin working towards an original seal. I will have my clones working towards this after the remaining seals are learnt. Shouldn't be too long now. I should be done with this in the next round of training. Fujin left his house and went to the training ground to continue with the wind domain training. Fujin walked to the center of the training ground while inspecting the training ground with his chakra field and stood facing a tree after confirming that there was no one spying. He began emitting chakra into the air. Soon, the entire surrounding was filled with his chakra. Fusion concentrated on the chakra in front of him. Winds formed and began moving towards the tree. However, instead of moving normally, the wind moved in a unique pattern. A large amount of wind concentrated together as if it was forming something. Soon, it took the form of a human hand. Its size was as large as a normal person, and instead of fingers, it had sharp-looking claws. Fusion controlled it and used it to grab a branch of the tree. Immediately, round a quarter of the leaves on the branch were pulled off. The branch itself was assaulted by the wind several times. Fusion observed the attack and thought, though I haven't made any groundbreaking progress in the wind domain, I am progressing steadily. This attack is a result of 3 weeks of training. I will call it the Ghost Palm. Once I master it, I can use it to grab or just slash my opponent. If I grab it, then I can use it to either immobilize him or to shred him. Fusion controlled the Ghost Palm and pulled all the leaves that were broken off towards him. The Ghost Palm slowly dissipated while a few hundred leaves moved towards Fusion. The branch stopped swaying. Some of its bark was peeled off, but the branch itself was largely unharmed. Fusion analyzed. Its power is still lacking, but I still have more than a month of vacation left. By the time it's over, this attack will be ready. Regardless, the wind domain has a lot more applications than I thought. Due to my chakra getting mixed with the wind, I get a lot of control over it. I can use it to concentrate the wind in one spot and decrease its density in the remaining places. It's this ability that I used to form the Ghost Palm. And by doubling down on this, I can use the Ghost Palm to create an immobilizing effect. Even without the Ghost Palm, if I just increase the concentration of air around and above an opponent, he will feel immense pressure. And once the wind domain is properly developed, I'll be able to do the vice versa as well. Every ninja, barring Obito, Pain's 6 bodies, and maybe the likes of Kakuzua's Haiden and Solri, needs air to survive. Though this technique wouldn't be effective by itself, as even an academy student can move out of the range. If I combine it with a Fuin Jutsu battlefield, this will be an easy killing move. If my opponent doesn't have a space-time movement jutsu like reverse summoning to escape, they'll die helplessly. Chapter 371 The Promised Fight. Fusion continued analyzing. The ability to control the wind and increase and decrease its density also has another advantage. My projectile control jutsu is on a whole new level inside my wind domain. As my control improves, I'll be able to use it to redirect my vacuum bullets and Gatling. Though the control over them wouldn't be too high, it will be sufficient to deal with anyone who tries to preemptively dodge them or barely dodge them by a few inches. Though this slight redirection can happen only inside the domain, it's fine as I could redirect them just before they leave the domain. And Fusion's eyes sparkled as he had a terrible idea. He analyzed. If I can go one step forward and control individual gases in the air inside my domain, then I'll reach a similar level of battle prowess as Hashirama and Madara, despite having far lesser chakra. Controlling what my opponents breathe. They wouldn't even know how they died. Unfortunately, I have no clue how to differentiate between gases, let alone control them. The difficulty of learning how to do either of that will be insane. It'll be like trying to come up with a new Keki Genkai. Leave it. This kind of thing can't be forced. It's like what Renjiro said for Keki Genkai. If I'm lucky and have the inspiration or somehow manage to merge the two elements properly instinctually, I'll learn the Keki Genkai. Otherwise, I might not learn one, even after spending decades working on it. Besides, even if I can't learn this, I do know how to learn a rank S jutsu that could neutralize almost all rank S ninjas if I hit them. The Reissunsurens. Should I try to learn it? Fusion fell into deep thought. After a few minutes, he concluded, there are a lot of drawbacks. Though my body is strong, I doubt it compares to Naruto's in healing and resilience. The backlash I'll receive will be even more severe. However, I could circumvent that by just having my shadow clones use that jutsu until I am strong enough. The other issue is time. Despite having the right idea, Naruto still needed several days or weeks with hundreds of shadow clones to learn this jutsu. Though this soldier pill is impressive, it is shit when compared to Kurama, even if I assume that my affinity for wind is significantly greater than Naruto's. I will still need a lot of time to master this jutsu, and these aren't even the main issues. How do you explain to Hiruzen how I learnt Rasengan? That bastard regularly peeks at my training with that perverted crystal ball. What's so entertaining about my training to peek so frequently? Can't he just watch girls like his perverted student? Anyways, he will notice my training if I train anywhere other than my basement. But learning such a destructive jutsu in my house is a strict no. Even with barriers, I don't think my house will last for long. I had hoped that the race engine would be in section A of the library. That would have given me the perfect explanation for how I know this jutsu. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Apart from some scrolls about Minato mentioning this jutsu, there is no information about race engine or how to learn it in the library. Fujin began thinking again. Unfortunately, he couldn't think of any method that could work. He sighed and decided, leave it. I'll learn this technique after I master the Flying Thunder God. I can just leave the village and create shadow clones to learn it where no one is praise. Suddenly, Fujin's eyes widened as he had an idea. He thought, wait a minute, why do I have to say that I replicated Minato's race engine? I'll use the same reason that Minato gave. I'll say that I was inspired to create this technique by Roshi's tailed beast bomb. I can even say that I thought that the fourth Hokage's jutsu sounded similar to the tailed beast bomb and was inspired to create it this way. Since I'll be trying to merge wind into it to create something that Minato failed in, I can claim the race endurance to be my personal invention. The only flaw in this line of reasoning is that it's been just around 8-9 months since I saw it. Minato needed 3 years to create this jutsu. Fujin thought for a few minutes again and decided, screw Minato, let Hiruzen think that I'm more talented than him. Or let him think that I got lucky and got the right inspiration quickly. However, showing Rasenjun will undoubtedly attract some suspicion from Hiruzen. I'll wait until I get the Flying Thunder God from him. After that, there isn't much that I'll want from Hiruzen. The only things that come to mind are Edo Tensei and 8-trigram divination seal. But the 8-trigram divination seal isn't very complicated. I already have a basic idea and should be able to create it quickly. As for Edo Tensei, Hiruzen won't give it to me no matter what. So it's pointless to think about it. Alright, after I get the Flying Thunder God, I will also begin learning race endurance. Until then, I'll continue working on my wind domain and taijutsu. Fujin suddenly looked to his left. Someone had entered the training ground. A confused look appeared on Fujin's face as he wondered, why is he here? A few seconds later, Hoka appeared in front of him. He had a serious look on his face. Fujin asked, hey, did something happen? Hoka shook his head and replied in a serious tone. 3 years have passed since the day we made that promise. Fujin became silent. He recalled the promise he made to Hoka in front of Miko's grave. He also recalled the words they exchanged when they met a few months ago. Fujin said, I am still a part of the Ambu. I can't go on a hunt right now. Hoka replied, it's fine. We can start once you quit, but since you are here, let's fight. I want to see how far I have progressed. If I beat you, we will begin looking for and hunting Uchiha Itachi. Fujin asked, you haven't ever defeated me yet. Are you confident in doing so now? Hoka took his fighting stance and said, I have trained every day for the past 3 years. Don't underestimate me, Fujin. It'll be the worst if we meet a calamity in the future, because you didn't take me seriously today. Fujin was surprised by Hoka's words. He thought. So he figured that out. I wonder if it was time, experience or guidance that made him understand. Hoka was thinking about the same matter as Fujin. He thought, 3 years ago, I was very impulsive and naive in wanting to hunt someone who could exterminate the entire Uchiha clan alone. Thankfully, Fujin stopped me and put forth this challenge. I didn't completely understand him back then, but I now understand why he wanted me to defeat him before we could begin our hunt. I understand why Rinjuro-sensei didn't try to get revenge. If I can't fight Fujin equally, then we will stand no chance against someone like Uchiha Itachi. In order to kill someone like Uchiha Itachi, we need to be strong enough to defeat the entire Hyuga clan by just ourselves. Fujin took a deep breath. He deactivated the training seal on his body. He grabbed a pebble, looked into Hoka's eyes and said, get ready, I won't hold back. We start when the pebble hits the ground. Fujin tossed the stone into the air. Unlike Hoka, he didn't bother getting into a fighting stance. He didn't even bother looking at the pebble. Instead, he just stared straight into Hoka's eyes. As soon as the pebble hit the ground, Hoka attacked. 8-trigram's vacuum palm. Hoka thrust his right palm at Fujin's chest. A vacuum shell compressed with gentle fist style was fired at Fujin's heart. However, Fujin's figure disappeared and reappeared a meter to the left. Hoka's eyes widened. He thought, so fast. Fujin disappeared again. This time, he was moving rapidly towards Hoka. Hoka slammed his hands on the ground. Earth released stone shuriken jutsu in an instant. Hundreds of stone shurikens formed and were fired at Fujin. They targeted Fujin as well as his escape routes. However, contrary to Hoka's calculations, Fujin didn't retreat. Instead, he continued moving forward while easily navigating through the gaps in between the hundreds of stone shurikens flying towards him. Hoka was surprised once again. He analyzed. His speed has increased too much. But why is he closing the distance between us? I calculated that he'd stay far away and tire me out with clones and long-range jutsus. Fujin's approach to the fight was completely different from any of his previous spars with Hoka and Miko. It made all of Hoka's plans useless, but it wasn't an issue with Hoka's strategic skills. Logically, Fujin should have maintained a distance from Hoka to avoid getting his chakra points blocked by Gentle Fist style. If he doesn't, then he'll be allowing Hoka to use his speciality against him. But for some reason, his approach to the fight was completely opposite of his normal fighting style. Hoka thought, all my plans were to force you into a close-range fight. But if you want to fight me with taijutsu yourself, then I don't need to bother with any distractions and complicated tactics either. Regardless, you are in my range. He immediately took his stance. 8 trigrams 32 poms Chapter 372 Fujin vs Hoka. As soon as Fujin appeared in front of him, Hoka unleashed a barrage of strikes. He didn't increase his attack step by step and directly unleashed 32 consecutive strikes. Fujin looked at the flurry of incoming attacks and thought, correct response. His arms moved at an even faster speed than Hoka's, but instead of attacking, he blocked all 32 consecutive strikes from Hoka. Hoka didn't manage to block even one chakra point on Fujin's body. After blocking the last strike, chakra concentrated on Fujin's right fist as he punched towards Hoka. Hoka's eyes widened as his Byakugan noticed the high amount of chakra concentrated on Fujin's fist. He immediately moved backwards and released chakra from all of his chakra points and immediately began spinning. 8 trigrams pom rotation. Fujin followed him and punched the protective shield around Hoka. The rotational force of Hoka's jutsu repelled Fujin's attack with an equal amount of power, forcing Fujin back a couple of dozen meters. Hoka wasn't spared either. The force of Fujin's punch was too high, and he didn't have enough time to reach his maximum rotation speed. As a result, he felt the full impact of the force as well and was sent flying backwards towards a tree. Hoka flipped at the last moment and landed on the tree's trunk on his feet. Before jumping back on the ground, Fujin shook his right hand while looking at Hoka and evaluating him. He analyzed. Not bad. I would have been disappointed if 32 poms was the best he could do. I wonder how he learnt it. Did he copy it like Neji, or did Heishi teach him for some reason? He said, pom rotation, the secret taijutsu of Hyuga's main clan. It's impressive that you learnt it. Hoka was in no mood to hear Fujin's praise. His mind was in shock at how good Fujin's taijutsu was. Not only did he take on the 32 poms head-on, but he also made a dent in his best defense. He asked, did you ever take me or Miko seriously in a spar, Fujin? Fujin answered, I always take all my fights seriously. I just prefer fighting in a way that has the least amount of risk. Hoka immediately realized. He is fighting in this manner so that I won't be able to complain about not being able to use my forte in the spar. Fujin said, don't get distracted. He disappeared and appeared behind Hoka and attacked him with a kick. Hoka barely managed to dodge the kick and counterattacked with Gentle Fist. Both entered into an intense taijutsu fight. Hundreds of punches and kicks were exchanged every minute. Neither Fujin nor Hoka made a single unnecessary movement. All their strikes were precise. Fujin had an advantage in speed and power. However, Hoka relied on his Gentle Fist style to counter all his attacks and forced Fujin to pull his attacks back several times. Despite having the advantage, to avoid getting his chakra points blocked, after 4 minutes of intense fighting, Fujin finally created an opening. He had blocked Hoka's arms and Hoka was barely off the ground. He immediately kicked towards Hoka's chest. Hoka saw the kick and cursed. Shit, I won't be able to block or dodge it. He immediately emitted chakra from the chakra points on his chest. Fujin ignored it, and his kick landed on Hoka's chest. Hoka immediately coughed blood and was sent flying back. However, Fujin had a thoughtful expression. He analyzed. I was planning on decreasing the amount of chakra I concentrated on my leg to not kill or injure him badly, but I didn't expect him to emit such a large amount of chakra from his chest to soften the impact of the kick. He has improved a lot. However, it isn't enough. Though Fujin wasn't known for his taijutsu, it was at a very high level as well. Sparring with Guy for a couple of weeks had resulted in rapid improvements due to how rarely Fujin had sparred in taijutsu prior. As such, Fujin was sure that no one in the Hyuga clan, barring Heishi, would be able to defeat him in a taijutsu fight. By giving Fujin such a close fight, Fujin was sure that Hoka was one of the strongest among the Hyuga clan. Despite his young age, Hoka, who was flying backwards, gritted his teeth and ignored the pain and blood as he began weaving hand signs. Water release water dragon jutsu. Hoka spat out a large amount of water as soon as he landed on the ground. It immediately took the form of a dragon and began moving towards Fujin, who was just observing it. Fujin analyzed. His ninjutsu is the biggest surprise though. To be able to create such a huge water dragon so quickly, combined with his taijutsu, he is definitely at the Junin rank. However, he is still some distance from the elite Junin rank. As for rank S, Fujin sighed and muttered internally, "That's just too far." Just like Fujin, Hoka was thinking a lot as well. He had a bitter expression as he thought, "My plan was to use ninjutsu to force Fujin into fighting me with taijutsu, or at least his sword, to think that I'm the one resorting to ninjutsu in order to buy some time." The water dragon reached Fujin. Fujin ignored it and just flickered out of its path. Though the jutsu was impressive, it was just too slow to be of any threat to Fujin. He flickered again to approach Hoka. Hoka's Byakugan were glued on Fujin. As soon as he saw Fujin, he immediately attacked the spot he was moving towards with the vacuum palm jutsu. Fujin immediately sidestepped it, but Hoka continued spamming the attack to target Fujin. Fujin continued dodging while getting closer to Hoka step by step. He wondered, did he take inspiration from my wind explosion jutsu? Not a bad tactic, but he doesn't have my chakra reserves to support such a high chakra expenditure. In order to spam such tactics, the basic requirement was that your chakra reserves had to be higher than your opponent's, as Hoka fired the vacuum palm jutsus rapidly. He concentrated chakra under his feet. His eyes followed Fujin closely. After Fujin dodged the last attack, Hoka thought, "That's it." He immediately jumped towards Fujin at blinding speed. At the same time, he shot the last vacuum palm. A smile formed on Fujin's face as he thought, "As I expected, he was trying to lure me in." He dodged the incoming vacuum palm and got ready for Hoka's attack. Hoka took his stance and muttered, "You are in my range." Hoka attacked Fujin twice, but Fujin blocked his wrists and didn't allow Hoka to hit him. Hoka followed with 4 strikes, 8 strikes, 16 strikes, and eventually 32 strikes, his momentum increasing each time. However, Fujin blocked all of his attacks perfectly. Hoka gritted his teeth and began attacking with even more ferocity and speed. 8 trigrams, 64 palms. This attack finally forced Fujin to his limit. However, instead of being bothered, a smile appeared on Fujin's face as he continued blocking the attacks, and thought, "Now that's more like it." Fujin's arms moved at the same speed as Hoka's as he continuously blocked every strike that Hoka did. Hoka had a grim expression. He had already attacked 48 times without any success. He gritted his teeth harder and pushed himself to his utmost limits. Fujin finally started having trouble keeping up. He barely managed to block 12 more strikes. However, just after he had blocked the 61st strike, Hoka's right arm passed through his defenses. Hoka's eyes lit up. He thought, finally, his right palm reached very close to Fujin's chest. However, before he could hit Fujin, blood sprouted out like a fountain. Hoka was shocked. The blood that erupted was from his right arm. He didn't understand how he was hit. The sight and pain made him stop momentarily. Fujin used that small opening and kicked his stomach, sending him flying across the training ground once again. This time Hoka couldn't recover, though Fujin hadn't concentrated chakra in the last kick. The attack had caught Hoka completely off guard and stunned him. In addition, he was mentally and physically tired from using the 8 trigram 64 palm jutsu, so he couldn't brush off the kick and fight back like the previous times. Hoka slammed into a tree and dropped to the ground. Fujin observed him and realized, it looks like he isn't used to using the 64 palms attack. All his focus was on the attack, and he didn't have the capacity to focus on anything else. A frown formed on Fujin's face as he thought, I expected him to get much stronger than this. Did he lose the conviction that he had on that day, or did he think that his current level was sufficient? This time, Hoka didn't get up. Instead, he just sat there while coughing, though the kick hadn't done a lot of damage and the cuts on his arm were shallow. Hoka understood that he would have died had Fujin concentrated chakra on his leg. He muttered in disbelief, I lost. Chapter 373 Harsh Truths. Fujin sighed on hearing Hoka's words. He flickered next to Hoka and tossed him a bottle stored in his bracer. Hoka caught it and began drinking the water. After a minute he said, Thank you. Fujin nodded without replying. He wasn't sure what would be the appropriate thing to say in that situation. Both stayed there silently. After a couple of minutes, Hoka said, You have become very strong, Fujin. I managed to defeat my father for the first time in the last month. I even learnt several ninjutsus to improve my medium and long-ranged fighting abilities. So I thought that I'd at least be able to fight equally with you. I never imagined that your taijutsu would be as good as mine. And he looked at the cuts on his right arm and continued. And that it would be so good that I forgot about your wind jutsus during our fight. Fujin extended his palm towards his arm and began healing him while replying, you have grown strong as well. Palm rotation would have been an obstacle if I had used ninjutsu. And I heard that only the main family in your clan can use the 64 palms attack. Hoka nodded and said, I haven't yet mastered it. I managed to push myself to the limit in the last week as our challenge was close and barely managed to learn it. I still can't do it successfully every time. That said, I didn't know you learnt medical ninjutsu. Fujin stopped healing him as the cuts had already closed up. He replied, just the mystical palm jutsu. It is a handy skill to have, especially if you get trapped in enemy territory. It can save your or your teammates' lives. You should learn it as well. You can ask about it in the hospital when you go to check your chest and abdomen. With your expertise in the gentle fist style, you should pick it up very quickly. Hoka chuckled and said, we human ninjas already serve as the best support on any squad due to our Byakugan and ability to protect ourselves. If we learnt medical ninjutsu as well, then our clan would be known as the support clan, ha ha ha. Fujin chuckled as well and commented, yeah, that's true. Hoka said, well, at least I didn't lose to you in just taijutsu and forced you to use a wind jutsu. I would have been extremely embarrassed if that happened, ha ha ha. Fujin didn't join in his laughter and had a peculiar expression. Hoka immediately noticed it. His eyes widened as he cursed, asshole, don't tell me you held back. Fujin replied awkwardly, well, not exactly, it's just that I could have just stepped back to avoid your attack which broke through my defense. Even though we were clashing using taijutsu, it wasn't a reason for me to defend against every attack, and seeing how much attention and energy you had to put into the 8 trigram 64 palm, you'd probably be defeated quickly with my counterattack. Hoka's expression immediately fell. He muttered, you don't want to leave me any dignity, do you? Why did you use ninjutsu if that was the case? Fujin shrugged and replied, you didn't have any guard up. So I couldn't resist the temptation of using it. Besides, I have defeated you several times by exhausting you to your limits. I didn't want to do the same this time. Hoka's head fell due to being depressed. He muttered, I didn't have any chance, did I? Fujin didn't reply. The two fell silent once again. After a couple of minutes, Hoka looked at Fujin and asked in a serious tone, Fujin, since you are so strong right now, why are you still against hunting Uchiha Itachi? If you catch him off guard, you can kill him with a single vacuum bullet. Fujin didn't answer Hoka's question and instead replied with another question. He asked, you were recently dispatched to the land of Waterfall, weren't you? Hoka nodded. Fujin asked, do you know why our armies were dispatched there? Hoka furrowed his eyebrows. He didn't understand where Fujin was going with this. He answered, we were dispatched due to some weird movements made by Iwa. They first kidnapped a large number of civilians, and later released most of them and tried to pin the blame on Konoha. However, I have no idea why they did that or how they were discovered. Fujin nodded and replied, they were discovered by my squad. Hoka was surprised. He hadn't expected that the situation would have anything to do with Fujin. Fujin continued, I fought with Kitsuchi in the land of Waterfall. Hoka's eyes widened. He exclaimed, you mean the Tsuchi Kage's son-in-law, the rank S ninja? Fujin nodded and continued, he can barely be considered a rank S ninja, kinda like the previous Uchiha clan leader, Wicked Eye Fugaku, but due to his Sharingan, I believe that Fugaku would be a much more difficult opponent on the battlefield. Hoka nodded. He had frequently struggled against Miko due to her Sharingan. By comparison, he had a much easier time against others at her level. He asked, what are you implying by this? Fujin replied, if I had fought against Kitsuchi in a one-on-one battle to the death, I would have most likely been the one to die. Uchiha Itachi killed someone stronger than him along with the rest of the Uchiha clan ninjas at the mere age of 13. Just like how we became stronger in the last 3 years, it is very likely that he has gotten stronger at the same rate. Hoka became silent on hearing Fujin's words. He sighed internally. Hoka's entire basis for revenge was Itachi getting overconfident and cocky and not becoming any stronger than he was 3 years ago. He thought, though I want to deny it, what Fujin said is true. If Itachi became stronger, then we might die without even getting a chance to escape. Fujin continued, we probably can't even beat the Itachi that killed his entire clan. Even if we assume he hasn't grown even a bit since that day, our chances of victory are very low. To make matters worse, we don't know what skills he might have been hiding back then, or the new skills he might have picked up since then. We also don't know what he has been up to since going rogue. I did try to look at his information in the ambu, but there was no news about him. If he is alone, we could try to test him out. But if he has made any allies or created a base, then the matter will become far more complicated. Hoka stayed silent. What Fujin said wasn't a lie. The amber had no record of Itachi's movements after he went rogue. Though Hiruzen knew about Itachi's movements and Akatsuki, he hadn't passed the information to anyone other than the elders. Even Shikoku was kept in the dark, though he had some estimates. As for the abilities of his Mangekyo and his spirit weapons, Fujin wasn't sure whether even Hiruzen and Danzo were aware of either of them. After some time, Hoka sighed and said, "You're right. Trying to attack him with our current ability and information will be suicidal. I will continue training. But how strong do you think that we need to be to hunt him down?" Fujin replied, "We will both need to be at least rank S ninjas. That will allow us to fight and retreat several times so that we can force him to expose all his cards one by one and create strategies to eliminate him. Killing him will take several rounds of battle, and that is assuming he has no help. But if we are both at rank S, then we could even test out his allies." Hoka sighed and said, "Rank S is more difficult than I thought it to be." Fujin nodded and said, "Even your clan leader isn't a rank S ninja. To become one, you'll have to defeat him at the very least." Hoka winced at that thought. Though Heishi didn't use the threat of the curse seal liberally, it always stayed in the back of the mind of every branch family member of the Hyuga clan. He sighed internally and thought, becoming stronger than the clan leader himself. "I hope nothing bad happens." Fujin looked at the expression on Hoka's face and immediately understood his dilemma. He sighed internally. What teammates I received. One whose death was a certainty, and another whose life and death aren't in his own hands. Though there isn't a record of Heishi abusing this power. Who would like to leave their life and death in someone else's hand? Fujin understood Hoka's internal struggle. The main job of the members of Hyuga's branch family was the safety of the main family. The clan leader was always looked at as the leader. If a member of the branch family gained higher strength or higher influence than the clan leader, then that member could be looked upon as a threat. For this reason, the Hyuga were kept out of amber route and any high-level positions in the village. Chapter 374: Hoka's resolution and Fujin's reasoning. Despite his complicated feelings, Hoka said, "I will train even harder. Fujin, though our target is very strong, I'll be disappointed in myself if I don't even try to avenge our friend." Fujin nodded and said, "Good luck. You will need to train a lot more. The difference between a Junin and a rank S ninja is very high. A couple of years of training isn't enough to bridge that gap. In addition, you will also need a lot of strong fights during missions to help understand what you lack." Hoka nodded and smiled. He said, "I believe you aren't too far from that level. Good luck, Fujin. I'm sure Sensei will be proud of you for becoming one so quickly." Fujin smiled and said, "Thanks, but I still have a lot to grow. Don't count on me to slack off just so that you can catch up to me." Hoka grinned and replied, "I will be disappointed if you do that. If that happens, then it won't be satisfying to finally defeat you." Fujin chuckled and said, "Don't forget to visit the hospital. I don't have much expertise in detecting or healing internal wounds." Hoka nodded and took his leave. Fujin looked at his back and thought, "Though I was a bit harsh, it was needed. Miko is already dead. There is no point in meaninglessly joining her. Though he is strong, if I give him false hope and he tries to go after Itachi by himself, he will die without a doubt unless Itachi convinces his partner to leave him alive. If Hoka doesn't surpass Heishi and reach the rank S, then it is pointless for him to even think about revenge." As he left the training ground, Hoka sighed and muttered to himself, "I thought that I was training too much for the last 3 years. My parents as well as clan elders frequently told me to take it easy. But Fujin, how hard did he train for his taijutsu to become better than mine? And the information in the bingo book says nothing about his taijutsu, meaning that his ninjutsu skills should be even more fearsome. I will have to train like a crazy person if I am to have any hope of catching up to him. After all, he doesn't have anyone to tell him to take it easy." Fujin was lost in thoughts as well. After Hoka left the range of his chakra field, Fujin sighed. He thought, "Though everything I said was what almost everyone believes to be true, I didn't tell him that I am probably the one who knows the most about Itachi's abilities. Though I am quite strong, and probably could even barely be considered a rank S ninja, or at least extremely close to it thanks to the jutsus I learnt in the last 2 months, defeating Itachi is still pretty much impossible. He can neutralize me at a glance using Tsukuyote. Though I am confident in my speed, if I mess up and get hit by Amaterasu, it would be deadly as well. Now that I think about it, I should make a seal imprint for sealing Amaterasu. It could be useful if I do end up fighting him or Sasuke. Anyways, in addition to being vulnerable to his attacks, I have no methods of piercing through his Susanoo. Even if I did, he still has the Yuta mirror to block anything I can throw at him. That asshole is full of cheats, and that's not even considering Kisame or Joza who might be with him. Anyways, what's the use of killing someone who is suffering himself? Be it mentally or from a deadly disease, he is already dead inside and isn't even the true culprit behind the event. If there is a culprit. Fujin looked in the direction in which he had sensed the bugs around 3 weeks ago. A frown formed on his face as he thought. Danzo, I hope you don't give me a reason to eliminate you so soon. Just keep hiding in the roots and wait for the death I have planned for you. I promise you, it will be a death in every possible meaning of that word. Fujin stopped thinking about Danzo and Itochi and returned to his training. However, there was a bit of restlessness in him, a restlessness to become stronger quickly. Fujin suppressed it and continued his training. Unfortunately, it didn't diminish much even after he was done with his training. While eating dinner, Fujin sighed and thought, "Oh, this restlessness is similar to what Ryo had pointed out. I was already upset at being countered that badly by Ian. I haven't even gotten a chance to repay that tailed beast bomb Roshi shot at me, and now Hoka brought back memories of Miko and reminded me of the abilities of those crazy bastards." Fujin sighed once again and thought, I hope the opponent in my last Ambu mission gives me a good fight. I have been itching for one ever since my fight with Roshi. That said, I need to return to Mount Muteki to calm myself a bit. Impulsiveness and restlessness are the bane of any ninja. A moment's distraction is all that is needed to lose my life. The next day, after sparring with Guy, Fujin informed him that he would be away for a few days and returned to Mount Muteki to meditate and calm his mind. He spent 3 days at Mount Muteki, mostly flying extremely high in the sky while meditating on Kaito's back. He also used the environment to improve his control over the wind domain at a much faster speed. After returning from the small break, Fujin returned to his routine of training to his limit, though the progress he made wasn't visible on a day-to-day basis. The massive amount of hard work he put in finally started showing results. 1 week before the end of his 3-month-long vacation, Fujin was training in the training ground along with a dozen shadow clones. Standing facing a tree, Fujin extended his right arm ahead and made a grabbing motion. In an instant, a claw formed around the trunk of the tree. Following the motion of Fujin's hand, it grabbed the trunk as well. The sharp winds that made the claw immediately pierced into the tree, breaking it in two. A smile formed on Fujin's face. He analyzed. The ghost hand is finally ready to be used in combat. It also provided me with a lot of insights into the entire wind domain. The reason why I managed to make the ghost hand sharp so quickly was because of the increase in the concentration of air to create the ghost hand. Though it's good enough for the ghost hand, I don't want to do this with the wind domain. If I have to concentrate the air in one place to make it sharp, it will make the process very slow, and anyone will be able to sense the change in air density, making dodging the attack much easier. For the wind domain to be as effective as I want it to be, I need the wind blades to be created spontaneously without any signs or a lot of time. Fujin suddenly received a bunch of memories, so did his shadow clones. Immediately everyone stopped training. An elated expression appeared on Fujin's face. A massive grin broke on his face. He muttered, "It's done, I'm a Fuin Jutsu Grandmaster." Fujin's clones had learnt each and every seal in section of the library. He had fulfilled the requirements of becoming a Grandmaster in Fuin Jutsu. Fujin almost began moving towards Hiruzen's office to demand the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, when his foot stopped. A frown appeared on his face as he realized, though Hiruzen unknowingly promised me the Flying Thunder God after the Chunin exam, knowing how cunning he is, I doubt he will hand it to me so easily. How do I ensure that he does so? Fujin dispelled the shadow clones in the training ground. At the same time, he created a new shadow clone and dispelled itself. Immediately, the clones that were still in the basement received a message. One by one, they dispelled themselves as well after short intervals. While he received their chakra and memories, Fujin sat down on a rock with his chin resting on his right hand while thinking about how to approach Hiruzen to raise the probability of his success as much as he could. Fujin's mind was completely focused. He completely exerted himself and extracted every last ounce of shamelessness hidden in each and every cell in his body to come up with arguments to confront Hiruzen and create contingency plans in case they didn't work. When the last clone dispelled himself, Fujin decided, There is no foolproof way. I did think of 2 arguments to appeal to him emotionally and another 5 to appeal to him logically. I can only hope that they work. If he still denies me the jutsu, then that would mean that the chances of getting this jutsu in a fair manner will be very low. Or rather, he would only give it to me when I make a huge contribution to the village. But there is no significant event that is about to happen for me to make such a contribution. And when one happens, Hiruzen will be the one kicking the bucket unless my actions change the future. And getting it from Tsunade or the elders will be even more difficult as I have little to no connection with them. So waiting obediently is out of the question. If he doesn't give it to me willingly, I can only force him to give it unwillingly. As for the method... A sadistic smile appeared on Fujin's face. If Hiruzen had looked at Fujin's expression at that moment using his crystal ball, he would have shivered involuntarily. Chapter 375 A feeling of emptiness. Fujin decided, if Hiruzen doesn't give me the Flying Thunder God Jutsu at all costs, I will take Naruto under my wing. I will first teach him the Shadow Clone Jutsu, and then teach him the Wind Jutsus that would be perfect for pranks, and since he is so gullible, I'll convince him that in order to become a Hokage, he will have to successfully prank the current Hokage 1,000 times. Though I don't think Hiruzen would refuse to relent after that. If he does, I will drop hints of intending to teach Naruto the Great Breakthrough Jutsu, and also of teaching him how to supercharge it. Fujin almost laughed in an evil manner while imagining the scene of 1,000 shadow clones spamming a supercharged Great Breakthrough Jutsu. He seriously doubted whether Konoha would continue to remain standing. There was no way Hiruzen wouldn't take that threat seriously. He began walking towards the Hokage building. En route, he thought, maybe that's why Kakashi never taught Naruto any jutsu to take advantage of his ridiculous chakra levels. But still, it's such a waste to know 1,000 jutsus if you aren't going to use them yourself or teach them to his students. Could have at least given Naruto a few jutsus that weren't too destructive in nature. Fujin stopped thinking about Naruto and went over the plans he had come up with to convince Hiruzen. After all, Naruto was his last resort. He'd prefer getting the jutsu directly from Pirwin on that very day. If he failed, then he could think of all the nefarious plans for however long he wanted to. Soon he arrived at the building and knocked on his door. Hiruzen looked towards the door and wondered, why is he here? He put a smile on his face and said, come in. Why are you here, Fujin? Fujin entered and put up the same smile as Hiruzen. He said, Grandpa, I have something to tell you, but it has to be alone. Hiruzen wondered, alone? Did he figure something out about Ayla's intentions? Or is he here to ask me for some favor? Due to his previous interactions with Fujin, Hiruzen was on a high alert. He nodded and said sure. His eyes moved towards the ceiling. Immediately, all 4 amber guard flickered out of the room and shut all doors and windows. Hiruzen activated the seals and said, speak. Fujin said in an excited tone, Grandpa, I have learnt all the seals from the library. I'm now a Fuinjutsu Grandmaster. Hiruzen immediately understood. He thought, so that's why he is here. As I guessed, he wants something. Knowing what Fujin wanted, Hiruzen relaxed. He said, that's good. Have you created an imprint for the 4 symbols seal as well? Fujin nodded. He extended his left arm. Immediately, a seal spread out from his left palm and covered his left hand and forearm. Hiruzen observed the seal imprint and analyzed. This is good enough. Since he could create a seal imprint for such a complicated seal so quickly, I don't need to test all his remaining seals. Hiruzen nodded and said, you have done a good job. Congrats. You are the 11th Grandmaster in Fuinjutsu in our village. Fujin immediately replied, thank you, Grandpa. Hiruzen asked, do you want to keep this a secret, or should I make your status as a Grandmaster in Fuinjutsu public knowledge? There were quite a few advantages of making the knowledge public. As a Fuinjutsu Grandmaster, Fujin's status would be on an entirely new level. His prestige would increase. A lot of ninjas and even the clan leaders would try to create good relations with him. So it would put a mark on Fujin's back. Fujin already had a 50 million Ryo bounty, so by no means would it make his situation any worse. And unlike most Grandmasters who focused entirely on Fuinjutsu and hence had limited combat strength, Fujin's main focus was ninjutsu. So he didn't have that weakness just like Hiruzen, Jiraiya and Danzo. However, Fujin still preferred keeping his cards hidden. He replied without thinking much, keep it a secret. If need be, we can make it public any time we want to in the future. Hiruzen nodded and said. All right, Fujin said, actually, there is one more thing. Hiruzen thought. Here it comes. Fujin continued, after I became a Chunin, you promised that you would teach me the Flying Thunder God Jutsu after I became a Fuin Jutsu Grandmaster, so could you teach it to me now? He looked at Hiruzen with a hopeful look on his face as thoughts clashed at the speed of light in Fujin's head to counter anything Hiruzen might say to decline his request. Hiruzen sighed internally and thought, I just said it so that he would stop bugging me. How would I have even known that he would become a Fuin Jutsu Grandmaster from nothing in less than 4 years? It almost feels like he already knew that this was a requirement and baited me into saying it. Hiruzen couldn't help but wonder. I wonder what Sensei would think if I started giving the Flying Thunder God as a reward for breaking a record in the Chunin exams. Hiruzen could imagine Tobirama lecturing him on making promises so carelessly. He thought, well, this won't be the first time I have disappointed Sensei. As Fujin expected, Hiruzen shook his head. However, Hiruzen's words were something he never imagined. Hiruzen said, I have no talent for space-time ninjutsu. The only ones I can use are summoning and reverse summoning jutsus, so I can't teach, guide or even help you in this regard. But I'll hand you the scroll for learning the Flying Thunder God Jutsu that the second Hokage created and the fourth Hokage improved. Whether you can learn it or not depends upon you. Fujin was stunned by Hiruzen's words. He thought, that's it, he isn't going to make me work to get the scroll, and he isn't going to give me a Will of Fire lecture for 3 hours. Hiruzen continued, I will arrange the scroll for you in a week. You can take it from me after you return from your next Ambu mission. Fujin was still speechless. He had calculated numerous schemes and arguments for so long. He never imagined that Hiruzen would just hand it to him. He just nodded absently. Hiruzen asked, anything else, Fujin? Fujin gathered his thoughts. He shook his head and said, no, just keep this a secret as well. Hiruzen nodded and replied, of course, you have done very well, Fujin. Though no one knows it yet, Konoha is proud of you. If you manage to learn the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, then you will be a beacon of hope for our village, just like the fourth Hokage was. Even if you don't, you are still doing very well, so don't force yourself too much. Fujin nodded and replied, I will, Grandpa, thank you. I will see you later. Hiruzen nodded and Fujin took his leave. Fujin didn't talk to anyone and just began walking back to the training ground at a slow speed. He was still processing his thoughts. Finally, he let out a sigh and thought, I should be happy and ecstatic for receiving this jutsu so easily, but for some reason, it feels like I have just suffered a great defeat. It almost feels like there is an empty feeling in my heart. Why is that? Meanwhile, in the Hokage's office, Hiruzen continued his work. He recalled his earlier interaction with Fujin and chuckled. He thought, does he still think that he is 11, or that I don't know him? I could smell his intention to fight for that jutsu from miles away. Why would I even bother making things difficult for myself when I intended to give him that jutsu eventually in any case? Although Fujin had tricked Hiruzen 4 years ago, Hiruzen didn't mind it. In his view, Fujin was already capable enough to receive a jutsu like the Flying Thunder God. After all, he had given it to Minato when he was even younger and weaker than Fujin. Though he would prefer to make Fujin contribute more to Konoha before giving him the jutsu, Hiruzen decided against it after recalling Fujin's actions in the Land of Wind and the Land of Grass and his way of contributing. Fujin reached the training ground but was still a bit down. He shook his head and thought, screw it, I got the jutsu, that's all that matters. I'll teach Naruto some wind jutsus to compensate for the emotional rollercoaster Hiruzen put me through. Besides, I will need some entertainment in my retired life. But since Hiruzen gave me the Flying Thunder God jutsu without any trouble, I'll leave out the shadow clones, Super K-Graph and the part about pranking the Hokage 1,000 times. Having cheered himself up, Fujin returned to training. Chapter 376, The Mole in the Anbu. In one of the many training grounds inside Konoha, it looked like a calamity had struck. Hundreds of trees were broken. The ground had dozens of craters. In fact, the entire training ground was covered in cracks. In this training ground, 2 individuals sat on broken stumps while breathing heavily. Guy said, you are growing very rapidly. Small quantities of chakra have already started infusing into your body. Exhaustion could be heard in Guy's tone. Fujin's breathing was even rougher. He said, it's thanks to your training plan. I already feel much stronger. In another couple of months, this process should reach the initial completion stage. In the last month, Fujin visited Yoshi in the Konoha hospital several times to confirm that the process wasn't harmful to his body, though he trusted his analysis and Guy's intentions. There was no harm in being more careful. Fortunately, the process was very safe and beneficial for him. Guy nodded and said, "Yeah, your progress will slow down once you reach that stage, but don't be discouraged. As long as you keep training, your body will keep getting stronger." He grinned, gave Fujin a thumbs up and said, "There is no limit to how much our bodies can improve." Fujin nodded and thought, "Yeah, who'd have imagined that this crazy guy would nearly kill Madara, who was at a level far beyond what he was in his prime?" Fujin said, "Don't worry, I'll keep working on my body." He chuckled and added, "I'd hate it if I couldn't make you go all out in our spars." Guy chuckled as well. Fujin continued, "But we won't be able to spar for a few days. I'll be going on a mission." Guy replied, "Actually, our spars will have to become less frequent." Fujin raised his eyebrow and asked, "Why?" Guy grinned and said, "Because I'm gonna be a sensei." Fujin acted surprised and said, "Oh, I nearly forgot that a new batch will be passing out from the academy." He chuckled and teased, "But I didn't think you were the sensei type, Guy. Ha ha ha." Guy ignored the teasing tone and claimed proudly, "My squad will have a very promising youngster. In the future, he may even give you a tough time, Fujin, so don't get too comfortable with your power." Fujin waved his arm dismissively and replied, "I'm still a few days away from my 15th birthday, so I am still in my youth and have a lot to grow. It is you and Kakashi who are getting older and have to be worried about being surpassed." Guy immediately stood up and exclaimed passionately, "Don't underestimate the power of my youth." Fujin chuckled and said, "I'll see you around, Guy. Good luck with your new students." He disappeared from the training ground. Guy muttered in annoyance, "Did Kakashi send him to me so that I wouldn't challenge him anymore?" He snorted and exclaimed loudly, "Kakashi, my eternal rival, we need to have another competition before we both become sensei." He disappeared from the training ground as well. Fujin returned to his home. Since it was the last day of his vacation, he decided to rest so that he would be at his full strength during the mission. Fujin analyzed, "This vacation was very fruitful. I created an array of new vacuum and wind jutsus that compensate for my previous weakness. Though a new counter can be created for my new fighting style, it will be more difficult and take a longer time. More importantly, they would have to know about these new jutsus, and I have several methods of keeping them hidden. Beyond that, my biggest gain was becoming Fuin Jutsu Grandmaster and creating seal imprints. My Tai Jutsu has also made massive improvements. And I have made my idea of the wind domain a reality, though it still needs a lot of work. After I quit Ambo, I will have to keep working on my Tai Jutsu and wind domain. Along with them, I'll have to work on learning the Flying Thunder God and creating the 8 trigram divination seal. Of these 4, the 8 trigram divination seal should be the easiest. Once I'm done with it, I'll create its seal imprint and then begin working on creating a battlefield as Uchiha Sora did. Say, the next year is going to be as hectic as my last 3 months. And that's without considering any outside interference." Fujin rested for the remaining day. The next day, he returned to the underground Ambu headquarters after 3 months. As usual, the Ambu headquarters had several Ambu moving around it. A few glanced at Fujin before continuing with their work. Fujin noticed their glances and didn't mind them. He just entered his assigned room. Unknown to him, one Ambu ninja became serious about seeing Fujin. However, he didn't glance at Fujin for more than a second, due to which Fujin didn't notice anything odd. He thought, "That's Suzuki Fujin, the spectral swordsman. Though he is wearing a mask, I can easily identify him." Danzo Summer said that he had taken a 3-month-long vacation. Since he is back, he should be taking a mission today. He immediately moved towards Eagle's office. Inside his room, Fujin met up with his team. He looked at all 3 and asked, "So, did you enjoy the vacation?" Buniro grinned and answered, "Of course, I was afraid that my sensei would have broken his ties with me had the vacation been any longer." Hearing his words, Yugo's expression also became weird. She had made hard to teach her so much that he had fallen sick. Fortunately, she was wearing her mask. She and Fumito nodded. Fujin said, "I would have loved to spar with you guys once again, but we will be hitting the ground running. Our next mission will be completed by you 3. I will be just observing you 3 and will only interfere if you can't handle the mission." Yugo replied, "You can leave it to us, Captain." Fumito nodded and added, "I have been wanting to test my skills for some time as well." Fujin nodded and said, "Good, I'll go take a mission from Eagle. You 3 wait here. By the time I return, decide on which disguise you want to use during the mission. We will be completing the mission under disguise." After the last mission, Fujin didn't want laziness to be the reason for getting caught in another trap. Though maintaining transformation jutsu all the time strained chakra reserves and concentration, it wasn't unbearable. The trio nodded. Fujin left his room. While Fujin was talking with his team, Danzo's subordinate entered Eagle's office and approached him. Eagle looked up and asked, "Tiger, does your team want to go on a mission again?" Tiger nodded. He was an amber captain just like Fujin. Of course, he was much weaker. Eagle quickly handed him a mission. Tiger read the mission information and asked, "Can I look into the other missions as well? In case there is one that suits my team more?" Eagle nodded. Ambu ninjas picking out missions for themselves during peacetime wasn't strange. Pretty much everyone did it regularly, unless there were special instructions from the Hokage, or a mission required a particular set of abilities. Tiger quickly looked into all the available missions. After a couple of minutes, he shortlisted two. He analyzed. A diplomatic mission to the Land of Grass. Danzo Summer said that Fujin was frequently given diplomatic missions in the last year, so he could be given this mission. But Tiger looked at the second mission and analyzed. But the situation in the Land of Waterfall is more important. We have to eliminate an entire noble family because they are planning for a deep cooperation with Awa. They will have a few Junins protecting them, and Awa ninjas could also be involved. With his past record, Fujin would likely be sent here. Tiger said, "I want to take this mission to the Land of Grass." Eagle replied, "All right, your team can take it." Tiger nodded and left. As soon as he left, he created 2 shadow clones. One shadow clone went out to inform his teammates while the other shadow clone snuck into the root facilities hidden underground. He himself kept waiting in the hall. His shadow clone reached Danzo's office in a minute. Danzo noticed him and asked, "Did Suzuki Fujin appear?" Tiger nodded and said, "He and his team have appeared in the Ambo headquarters. I believe they will take a mission today. I checked up on all the missions. There were 2 that I thought he would be given. I have taken one of them, so he should be dispatched to the Land of Waterfall to eliminate the Yanage family." Danzo nodded and analyzed. The Yanage family, they are trying to enter into an alliance with Igawatga due to the previous events. A good mission. The presence of Igawatga ninjas wouldn't be seen as suspicious. He said, "Good work, return to your duties. Send me a confirmation when you see him leaving. After that, just complete your mission properly." Chapter 377 Danzo's Treacherous Scheme? Tiger nodded and dispelled his shadow clone. Danzo got into action as well. He dispatched a couple of root squads. Both squads consumed soldier pills and traveled straight to Igawatga. Their goal was to inform Igawatga of the fact that Fujin was sent to eliminate the Yanage family. Danzo saw the 2 squads leave and thought, Igawatga suffered heavily at Fujin's hands last time. They should understand that his threat is far greater than the benefits of befriending the Yanage family, so Onoki will use this opportunity to set up a trap to lure and kill Fujin. But according to my calculations, they will fail. Onoki and the Jinhyukaris can't move. They can only send Kitsuchi and more Junins. Though I'm not sure what training Fujin did, considering how intense and secretive it was, I believe he should have trained in a way to counter Kitsuchi and other Awa ninjas. So Fujin won't die, but the same can't be said about his teammates. However, losing 3 Ambu ninjas in exchange for dozens of Igawatga Junins is beneficial for the village. This clash, in addition to the previous one, will significantly weaken Iwa's morale and confidence. More importantly, getting ambushed for the second time will make Fujin question Hiruzen and the Ambu organization's competence and intentions. I can use that to recruit him. Hiruzen has been giving Fujin diplomatic missions and taking him along for negotiations. Such a waste of his potential. Only under my guidance can he contribute the most for Konoha. Danzo's strategy was extremely treacherous. Even more impressive was that he came up with it in mere minutes. His scheme would cause heavy damage to Igawatga and create a deep wedge between Fujin and Hiruzen. If everything went according to his plan, then he could get a very capable subordinate. Even if calculations were inaccurate and Fujin ended up dying, Danzo wouldn't suffer any losses or lose any sleep over it. Fujin was unaware of the treacherous trap targeting him. Though he had taken sufficient precautions against Danzo, he never imagined that Danzo would use such an unconventional method to create trouble for him. He entered Eagle's office. Tiger, who was near the office, noticed him entering. Eagle saw Fujin and said, "It's good to have you back." Fujin nodded and said, "It's good to see you again as well. We will be hitting the ground running. Have any good missions?" Eagle nodded and handed Fujin the mission to eliminate the Yanage family. Fujin read the information and analyzed. A typical elimination mission. They have 2 Junins, but they are from Taki and not one of the 5 major villages. It won't be any challenge to eliminate them. However, since Igawatga is involved, a couple of their Ambo could also be hiding there. That could make things interesting. But Fujin sighed internally and thought, It'll be a rather lousy mission for my last Ambu mission. Fujin placed the mission file back on the desk and said, "It's not good enough. Do you have any Rankis mission?" Eagle was confused. He said, "This is a Rankis miss." Fujin interrupted him and said, "It's too easy. I want a tougher mission to test my team. Something that will have multiple Junin level ninjas in the enemy ranks." Eagle wondered. Is he upset that his team wasn't much help in the previous mission and wants to put them to the test? Suddenly, Eagle's eyes widened. He asked, "Do you intend to?" Fujin nodded and said, "It's time. Yugo and Fumito are already very capable." Eagle nodded and said, "All right." He went through his files and grabbed another file. He handed it to Fujin and said, "This is a mission from the Land of Hot Water. Their southern territory has seen a lot of attacks from rogue ninjas from Kirigujka. The high number of attacks shows that there is some sort of cooperation among those rogue ninjas. Lord Hokage believes that Kirigujka itself is involved in these attacks, and these rogue ninjas are just a front. As we aren't sure of the situation, we were planning to send 3 Junin squads left by 2 elite Junins to deal with the situation. However, since you want a more difficult mission, your squad can take it. But you will ascertain the situation first. If it is beyond what you can deal with, you can retreat. We will be sending the units we planned 1 week later. You will cooperate with them to get the job done." Fujin went through the details in the file and said, "All right, we will take this mission." He tossed a seal to Eagle and said, "If we can't complete the mission, this seal will burn." Eagle took the seal and said, "All right, good luck. Meet up with the daimyo of Hotwater to get updates on the situation. They could have already found out the location of any enemy bases in their country." Fujin nodded and stored the file in his bracer before leaving. He quickly met up with his team and they left the Ambu headquarters. Tiger noticed their movements and thought, "I was right." He quickly sent another shadow clone to Danzo to inform him about Fujin's team's departure. Unfortunately, despite making an excellent plan on the go, Danzo failed to consider that Fujin would refuse the assigned mission and take a mission that required several squads to complete and wasn't supposed to be an Amber mission, so the root ninjas he deployed moved in the complete opposite direction of Fujin's squad. While Tiger could glance a few times at Fujin inside the Ambu headquarters, he didn't dare to chase Fujin outside to keep an eye on his movements, so Danzo would stay unaware of the real mission that Fujin took for a few days, making it too late for him to do anything about it. Fujin's team moved rapidly through the Land of Fire. En route, they had used transformation jutsu to disguise themselves. No one would be able to link them to Fujin and his team. They rested at the border between the two countries at night and continued moving the next day. At noon they reached Yugaku-rei. They quickly flickered in front of the daimyo palace. The samurai guards were startled to see 4 masked ninjas suddenly appearing out of nowhere. Before they could ask anything, Fujin tossed a file and said, "We come from Konoha regarding the mission Lord Daimyo issued. Inform him of our arrival." The samurai caught the file and looked at it before replying, "All right, stay here for a few minutes." He immediately sent a servant inside to deliver the message. Opposite the daimyo palace was a small shop. As soon as Fujin's squad arrived, his eyes immediately moved towards them. He observed them, and within a second turned them away. He thought, from Konoha, if Fujin had known that the words he spoke were heard by a shopkeeper across the street, he would be surprised. After all, though he wasn't too soft, his voice wasn't loud enough to be heard on the other side of the street. The shopkeeper analyzed. 2 fatties, 1 skinny and 1 with a slightly decent build, all 4 men. Lord Rakage had said that the squad he is looking for has 1 girl who has long purple hair, a blonde man and 2 with black hair, and none of them were fat. This isn't the squad he is looking for. He went about his business and didn't look at the Konoha ninjas again. Unknowingly, Fujin had dodged 2 menacing bullets in 2 days. Had he known about it, he'd be amused and be thankful that luck was finally with him. Unfortunately, he had no way of knowing the 2 devious schemes he avoided unknowingly. After a few minutes, Fujin and his team were invited in. They were escorted to the conference room. On entering the room, Fujin noticed the daimyo sitting on the farthest seat from the door. Several nobles were also sitting in the room. In addition, there were a few samurais in the room. There was a familiar face as well. Fujin looked at a large man sitting next to the daimyo and thought, "A Tokuni, since when did he start sitting next to the daimyo? Is there a change in the internal politics of this country?" Tokudi was one of the few who advocated for more funding for the ninjas in the Land of Hot Water. On the other hand, the daimyo and most of the nobles wanted to completely stop funding for the ninja academy due to numerous reasons. Though Fujin was intrigued, he didn't have any time to investigate it. The daimyo said, "This mission will require more than just 4 ninjas, and it will be a joint mission with our ninjas. Why did Lord Hokage send just the 4 of you?" Fujin replied. Lord Hokage believes that Kirigajka might be the ones backing the rogue Kiri ninjas, so this mission could be far more complicated than what you imagined it to be. Chapter 378 A Massacre. A frown formed on the officials from the Land of Hot Water. Tokuti said, "We have that suspicion as well, but it still doesn't answer why there are only 4 of you here." Fujin answered, "We will be entering into their territories to investigate. If Kirigajka is involved, then Lord Hokage will send the required forces a week later. You can join them, but be prepared. The conflict could be a lot more intense than what you have calculated. If Kirigajka isn't involved, then we will be completing the mission by ourselves." Tokuti thought for a bit and replied, "All right," Fujin said. "Hand over what you have already analyzed so that we won't waste any time repeating the same or searching fruitlessly." Tokuti nodded and placed a map on the table. He quickly explained their findings and analysis to Fujin and his team. After getting all the required information, Fujin and his squad left immediately. After they left, Tokuti sighed and muttered, "It is so difficult to cooperate with the Enbu of other countries." However, one of the nobles snorted and commented, "At least they are willing to undertake such risky missions." Tokuti looked at the noble but didn't say anything. The amount of ninjas in the Land of Hot Water was already pitifully low. He had no intention of wasting their lives just to prove a point. Fujin's team rapidly moved through the Land of Hot Water towards the coastal areas. While moving, Fujin instructed, "As I said, this mission will be up to you. Yuga, you will take over my role. I will keep an eye out from far and will jump in if need be, but operate under the assumption that I'm not here." Everyone nodded. Within a couple of hours, they reached one of the locations that Tokuti had pointed out. The location was a small hill that had a large cave within it. Fujin stayed back while Yugo took charge. She moved close to the cave along with Fumito and Buniro. Buniro softly said, "The cave seems to be abandoned." Yugo nodded and instructed, "Fumito, send a shadow clone through the underground, see if you can feel any chakra signatures. If you don't, then activate your chakra field and inspect." Fumito nodded and created a shadow clone. The clone moved through the ground into the cave. He tried to feel any chakra fluctuations in the cave passively but didn't sense anything. After a few minutes, the clone activated his chakra field. It covered the entire hill. He didn't detect anyone and came out of the ground and began inspecting the cave. After some time, the clone dispelled himself. Fumito received his memories and said, "There is no one inside the cave. There aren't any traps inside either. Even if there was anyone here earlier, all traces have been eliminated." Yugo said, "All right, we will move on to the next location." The group immediately began moving towards other bases that Tokuti had pointed out earlier. However, every base they went to turned out to be empty. Yuga fell into a dilemma. After thinking for a bit, she said, "The mission also requires us to check up on the villages in this area. We will do that before moving closer to the shore." Fumito and Buniro nodded. They arrived at the first village. However, to their surprise, it was empty as well. Buniro frowned and asked, "What the hell is going on here? Why is everything that guy pointed to empty?" Fumito muttered, "I'm afraid that something huge is happening here." Fujin, who was observing from a bit away, wondered, "That's strange. Why is this village empty as well? If there was a clash, there would at least be blood stains in the village. But there is nothing of that sort. It's as if everyone left obediently." He thought for a bit before his eyes suddenly widened. He thought, "Don't tell me Haydn is planning his ritual. I haven't heard any news of his slaughter yet. Things will be a lot more complicated if he gets involved." Yugo instructed, "Let's check up on the other villages." They immediately began moving. The next village turned out to be empty as well. Fujin wondered, exactly how many people does he need for the ritual? Now that I think about it, Haydn would be the perfect target to master reading memories perfectly. But should I kill him now? It'll create some changes in the Akatsuki. Fujin was on the fence. He followed his subordinates while analyzing. Right now, Haydn is the only future Akatsuki member that I'm confident in defeating other than Deidara, who hasn't gone rogue yet. I can cut him into pieces and seal him up. But who would partner up with Kakuzu's? If I eliminated Haydn now, it will be a pain in the ass if the pairings of Akatsuki are changed. It could change the future completely if they decide to not recruit Deidara and partner Sori and Kakuzu's. Then I'm not sure how the Gera rescue mission would go. I will have to convince Tsunade or Hiruzen if he lives to add me to that squad as well to ensure that the future doesn't get too disrupted. Fujin suddenly looked up and a frown appeared on his face. He decided, I'll decide when I encounter Haydn. Just like Fujin, the expressions of his teammates became dark as well. Despite wearing masks, their gloominess could be sensed. Buniro entered the village and muttered, which bastard would do something like this? After finding 5 empty bases and 2 empty villages, the group finally entered a village that wasn't empty. Instead, it was dyed in blood. The streets were littered with dead bodies. The 3 of them immediately began inspecting the bodies. Fujin entered the village as well and began observing. He thought, it looks like everyone was killed by a sword. It doesn't look like a ritual. He was confused. He wondered, this should be done by rogue Kiri ninjas, so is Haydn not involved? Or did he take the opportunity of the chaos to kidnap normal civilians for his ritual? Buniro asked, should we bury them? Yugao shook her head and said, they are already dead. There is no point in wasting time here. The killings happened more than a day ago. We will move to the next village. Buniro didn't argue. He knew that saving the ones alive was more important than burying the dead. They immediately began moving towards the next village. After a few minutes, they arrived in the next village. This time, they finally found someone alive. The village was largely abandoned as well. Only a few dozen elderly and a handful younger people were in the village. The people immediately became tense after seeing them. Yugao approached an elderly man and started having a small conversation. After learning that they were sent by the daimyo, the people finally relaxed. Yugao asked, why are there so few people in the village? The elderly man sighed and said, round 2 months ago, all the money in our homes started disappearing. Every house in the village had most of their money taken away, and not a single person saw anything. So we believe that a ninja stole all our money. Yugao and the rest were surprised to hear that. The elderly man continued, it caused a lot of unrest in the village. However, we slowly moved on from it as nothing could be done. But then it happened again a month ago. That made many people leave the village and migrate closer to Yuga-Kurei, until the day before yesterday. Round half the people had migrated. However, yesterday, one person came running to the village. He told everyone that everyone in the neighboring village was killed and their bodies and blood littered the village. That caused almost everyone in the village to panic and escape immediately. Only us old fellows who don't want to leave our home stayed behind. Yugao, Fumito and Buniro let out a sigh. They understood the trauma those people would have faced. However, they were glad to realize that the people in the empty village were moving to Yuga-Kurei instead of being dead. Yugao said, thank you for telling us. We will take action immediately. The elderly man and others around him immediately thanked her. The Konoha ninjas moved out and began moving towards the shore. As she moved, Yugao thought, being a captain is a lot more taxing than just having to follow orders. I have to accept the responsibility for the lives of so many people. One wrong decision could result in more massacres like the one in the previous village. No wonder Lord Hokage hasn't promoted me yet. A few dozen kilometers away, along the shores of the land of hot water, a miserable shriek was heard. A person, dressed in civilian attire, was on his knees. Though he looked ordinary, he was a Junin from Kirigujka. His right arm had been cut off at the elbow. However, instead of being concerned about it, he looked hatefully at the person standing in front of him. In front of him was a tall and slender man. He had no eyebrows, creases under his eyes and a cross-shaped scar on his right cheek. His hair and eyes were dark grey in colour, and his hair was short and spiky. He also had a red grid-shaped marking covering his jaw. However, the thing that stood out the most was that he held a sword that was as long as his height. Chapter 379 Betrayal. The man cursed, Juzo, you bastard, our village raised you and trained you for years. The third Mizukage even gave you that sword. Why the hell did you betray us? And why are you attacking me? Did you forget how long we fought together before you were chosen as one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist? Also, what's with that weird cloak? Juzo didn't answer his question and instead asked, Mitsuru, were you the one to slaughter those 2 villages? Mitsuru frowned. He asked, what of it? We have done the same thing so many times in the past war. Our village needs funds for defeating those fucking rebels. Don't tell me you have gone soft after betraying our village. Suddenly a grin appeared on Juzo's face. He said, I don't care about that trash. I have just been asked to collect the bounty on your head. In the next moment, Juzo disappeared from his spot. He appeared behind Mitsuru. A second later, Mitsuru's head flew from his head. He looked at Juzo hatefully as he, a Junin from the Mizukage faction, died. Juzo collected his head while recalling his interaction with pain. A few days ago, in a hidden base inside the Land of Rain, a silhouette suddenly appeared. 2 pairs of eyes glanced towards the figure. The diver path Pain instructed, Juzo, go to the southern shores of the land of hot water. A large number of Kiri ninjas have infiltrated there and are causing several massacres. You will collect the bounties of the Kiri ninjas that are attacking. A frown formed on Juzo's expression. He said, I already informed you that I have no intention of dealing with Kiriguchika. You can send Kakuzu's or Itachi there instead of me. Pine shook his head and replied, Kakuzu's is finding information about the two Jin Hyukaris in Igawatka. However, he had hit a dead end. Itachi will be sent there to cooperate with him. Not to mention, you are more familiar with how the Kiri shinobi operate. For that reason, I have also sent Kisum to that location. Juzo sighed and said, all right. Pine nodded and instructed, both of you will leave right away. His figure disappeared from the base. Soon after, Itachi and Juzo disappeared as well. One moved towards the land of earth while the other moved in the opposite direction and entered the land of fire. As Juzo stored Mitsuru's head, he thought, although he asked me to collect the bounty. I believe his main concern was the innocent people who were dying due to the actions of the Mizukage. Being soft like that won't be of any help in fulfilling his goal. Regardless, I need to speed up. Once the Kiri ninjas learn about Mitsuru's death, they will escape. I need to find their main base before that happens. That said, I have to admit that they have become far better at hiding. From what I remember, they should have been moving openly in a weak country like this one. I wonder what changed after I left. He sighed and wondered. Why couldn't he send Kakuzu's here and send me with Itachi instead? Isn't collecting bounties his job? Also, why does Akatsuki need so much money? I don't recall any operations needing money so far. He disappeared from his spot and began looking for the remaining Kiri ninjas. Just like him, another group was searching for the Kiri ninjas near the shores. After searching for almost half a day, Yuga and the rest had gone through every suspected base and had returned empty. With his shoulders dropped, Buniro complained, this land of hot water is completely useless. Not a single base they marked had anyone inside it. Forget people, we didn't even find any signs of the bases being occupied previously. Fumito sighed as well. Since no conflict occurred, he had to do all the work, though Yuga and Buniro were sensors as well. They paled in comparison to Fumito's sensing skills. Since the opponents were suspected to be quite strong, they didn't take any unnecessary risks. Yugo said, it's already past midnight. Let's take a break. We will begin our investigation again tomorrow. The three of them began looking for a decent place to rest for the night. While looking for it, they found a cave that was very well hidden from sight. They were about to walk towards it when all three suddenly stopped and hid behind trees. A moment later, two ninjas appeared out of the cave. All three Konoha ninjas had a peculiar expression. They cursed in their minds. We searched for these bastards all day, and just when we were about to quit and take a break, they appeared in front of us by themselves. Of the two ninjas that appeared from the cave, one was a Junin while the other was a Chunin. The Chunin exclaimed, finally, we can move out again. I can't spend any more time in that dull cave. He looked at the Junin and asked, Captain, why do we stay so careful? Unless Yuga Kurei mobilizes its entire force, they won't be able to do anything to us. The Junin frowned and said, don't get too overconfident. This isn't the first time we are doing such a mission. The last time we tried it, we suffered heavy losses. That is why we are acting so carefully this time. The Chunin was surprised. He asked, how could Yuga Kurei have someone who can defeat us? The Junin answered, it wasn't Yuga Kurei ninja. They issued the mission to Konoha who sent that cowardly swordsman. That coward cut down dozens of our dispersed ninjas one by one. If we hadn't been lucky, we might not have even understood who it was. But by the time we realized it, our forces had already suffered a heavy loss. When we grouped together, he didn't attack us even once. The incident that he said was before Fujin had become an Ambo captain, and the title of the Spectral Swordsman wasn't given to him yet. During one assassination during the mission, 3 Kiri Junins suddenly appeared, forcing Fujin to retreat. It was the first instance of him being seen in action by someone who didn't end up dead. The Chunin was shocked. He said, I had heard rumors about the Spectral Swordsman. But I thought they were just rumors. Why would Konoha dare to attack us? We are a major village too, the Junin replied, but we are embroiled in a war. At such a time, we can't afford to go to war with Konoha. Besides, we didn't know for sure if it was Konoha back then. But now we do, the Chunin nodded. He said, that's enough depressing talks. Let's just go and steal from those losers again. The Junin nodded. Both he and Chunin began moving towards a village. Though Yugo and the others couldn't hear their words, they understood that the Kiri ninjas were moving out to attack the villagers. All three exchanged glances. At the same time, all three disappeared from their spots and silently trailed the two Kiri ninjas. After moving a sufficient distance away from the cave, they immediately sprung into action. Yugo grabbed her sword. Hazy Moon Knight, she flickered and moved towards the Junin. Though he hadn't sensed the Konoha ninjas, as soon as Yugo made her move, he became alert. He grabbed a kunai and turned around while shouting, "There are enemies." The Chunin also became alert. The Junin saw Yugo moving rapidly and the afterimages of her sword. A grim expression appeared on his face. Yugo appeared in front of him and swung her sword straight at his neck while utilizing her high speed. To her surprise, the enemy Junin blocked her sword with his kunai perfectly. Yugo quickly followed up with several dozen high-speed sword attacks. The Kiri Junin also moved his kunai rapidly and blocked every attack while retreating backwards. The Kiri Chunin was shocked to see such a high-speed battle. He was about to attack Yugo when he noticed another figure from the corner of his eye. Bunero appeared and threw 6 shurikens at the Chunin. The Chunin blocked a couple with his kunai and dodged the rest. The Junin moved towards him and shouted, "Send a signal immediately. I will cover you." The Chunin shouted, "I will." The Junin couldn't take his attention off Yugo for even a second. He was having difficulty in blocking her sword. And due to her fast-paced attacks, he didn't have any time to weave hand signs. The Junin blocked another Yugo's sword once again and cursed, "I will make you rega." In horror, he turned his head to look behind him. His subordinate had stabbed him with his kunai instead of sending a signal. Before he could understand what was happening, Yugo took advantage of the distraction and beheaded him. He died without understanding why his loyal subordinate had betrayed him. Chapter 380 Ambushes. Bunero flickered next to Yugo. Both of them looked at the Kiri Chunin. The Chunin looked at them and said, "Tie me up as usual." Yugo and Bunero nodded. They knew that it was Fumito who was hiding earlier and took over the Chunin's body. In a few seconds, the Chunin was properly tied up. Fumito released his jutsu and returned to his original body. The Chunin had just regained consciousness when he was knocked out by Yugo. Fumito immediately began reading his memories. After around 10 minutes, he said, "There are 23 ninjas inside that cave. All are Kirigujka ninjas, and none have gone rogue of them. 4 are Junins, while the rest are Chunnings." A frown appeared on Yugao's face. She muttered, "We won't be able to take on such numbers in a direct conflict. We will have to sneak into the cave and eliminate them silently one by one. But even that will be very risky." She looked at Fumito and asked, "Did you see the internal layout of the cave from his memories? Is there a way to target the ninjas inside 1 or 2 at a time?" Fumito answered, "I did see the layout. Unfortunately, there is no way to do that as we won't be able to enter the cave without being detected. The cave is covered in numerous seals. They can detect if anyone who isn't a part of their group enters the cave. And there are numerous barriers as well. This man doesn't know which seals were used. I could read the Junin's memories, but I doubt they would help much either." Yugo nodded and said, "I see. We can't infiltrate in that case. We don't have the same Foin Jutsu skills as Captain." Fumito and Bunero nodded. Yugo said, "I guess that leaves us with just one option." Her eyes moved towards the unconscious ninja. She asked, "Where were they planning on going? And will the others inside the cave be moving out as well?" Fumito answered, "These 2 were heading towards a village. Their goal was to steal all the money inside it. As for others, they won't be moving out. They have a rule that only 2 pairs of people can move out at the same time. The rest stay within the cave. The second group is already out, so the others won't move out until the other group returns." Yugo analyzed for a couple of minutes and said, "Read both their memories. Find out who was in the other group that is outside. Find any other information you will need to impersonate them. You will be the one infiltrating inside the cave." Fumito nodded and got to work. He ate a soldier pill and began reading memories of the dead Junin and the unconscious Chunin. In an hour, he had collected all the information that he wanted. He learnt that Mitsuru had moved out alone a couple of days ago. He stopped reading memories and sat down to relax for a bit while informing Yugo about what he found. Yugo immediately created a basic plan and explained it to Fumito. A few minutes later, the unconscious Chunin finally showed signs of waking up. Fumito got up. He grabbed a pill and swallowed it. Bunero and Yugo did the same. Fumito looked towards the Kiri ninja and made a hand seal. Ninja art mind transfer jutsu. His consciousness turned into spiritual energy and entered the Chunin's body once again at the same time. His body collapsed. Bunero caught Fumito's real body while the Kiri Chunin's eyes snapped open. He looked at Yugo and nodded. Yugo grabbed her sword and cut off his bindings, freeing him. He got up, stretched his body and said, "Look after my body, keep it at the same location that we were hiding earlier so that I can return to it immediately." Yugo said, "We will move first, memorize the location properly. I'll leave a clone to watch over your body." He nodded. Yugo and Buniro immediately left while carrying Fumito's body. Fumito saw them leave. He waited for a few minutes and got used to the new body. At the same time, he took a kunai and made numerous light cuts on his arms, legs and cheeks. He made a few more preparations. After 5 minutes, a look of panic appeared on his face, and he began running towards the cave. Fear could be seen on his face as he reached the cave. He glanced towards the spot where Yugo and Buniro were hiding and saw his body. He continued running, entered the basement and shouted as loudly as he could, "There is trouble." His loud voice immediately woke up every sleeping Kiri ninja. Fumito continued running towards the central room in the cave while breathing roughly. All Kiri ninjas, including the Seal Master, arrived in that room as well. The Kiri ninjas immediately noticed all the blood covering his clothes and the injuries on his body. Everyone immediately became serious. One asked, "What's the situation?" Fumito spoke hurriedly. Mitsuru-sama was attacked while he was returning here. We saw him fighting with 8 ninjas by himself, so Captain and I jumped in to help him. However, they were too strong for us. They bought an opportunity for me to escape. We have to reinforce them quickly. His words immediately made everyone's expression grim. The Seal Master immediately said, "We need to southeast." Suddenly he noticed something odd and took a look at the ninja. His eyes had become unfocused as if he was waking up from a sleep. At the same time, he sensed a bit of chakra emitting from his body. He wasn't the only one. The other Junins also noticed something odd. Before they could say anything, the Kiri Chunin exploded with a massive bang, so the explosion was incredibly powerful. Fire and shockwaves immediately engulfed the surrounding Kiri ninjas, most of whom were completely caught off guard. Only the Junins and a few Chunins managed to react in time and retreated backwards. 13 Chunins took the full brunt of the explosion. Their bodies were blasted into the walls of the cave. Not a single one survived. Another 4 Chunins managed to barely retreat in time. They were still hit by the explosion, which left burns of varying degrees on their bodies. The remaining 2 Chunins and the 4 Junons managed to retreat safely. However, everyone had grim expressions. One cursed, "That incompetent bastard." Another said, "How will we explain such losses to the Mizukage?" The third one asked, "Was he under a genjutsu? But who can cast such a strong genjutsu?" The Seal Master thought for a bit and said, "It could be genjutsu or the Yamanaka technique. Regardless, we are in danger. The culprit should be waiting outside for us. We need to prepare for a bat." He stopped speaking and suddenly began coughing non-stop. Several drops of blood fell on the ground. Immediately, the others also began coughing. After some time, one of them cursed, "Poison." That explosion also contained poison. The Seal Master said, "Our health will get worse with time. We need to retreat into the sea." Just after he said it, sounds of explosion were heard once again. Soon tremors were felt as the cave started collapsing. While running inside the cave, Fumito had discreetly planted a few explosion tags on the floor and walls of the cave. The cave's structure was already damaged heavily due to the earlier explosion. The new explosions immediately caused the cave to collapse. Outside the cave, Buniro's clone said, "That was a good explosion. The cave is collapsing." Fumito, who had just returned to his body, said, "It better be. I had stuck 60 explosion tags on that guy's body. I'm surprised that the cave is still standing despite that explosion. I wanted to use the other tags to ambush them while they were escaping." Inside the cave, the surviving ninjas immediately used jutsus to ensure that the cave didn't collapse. Using that time, they began escaping from the cave. As they moved, they prepared themselves for a fight. Everyone had a grim expression, as the poison was making it difficult for them to move normally. As soon as they exited the cave, Yugo and Buniro, along with their clones, bombarded them with kunai that had explosion tags attached to them. The Kiri ninjas noticed it and immediately made hand seals. Water release water wall jutsu. Multiple water walls went up in front of them. The kunais hit them and exploded. The water walls collapsed, but the explosions were stopped. As soon as the water walls collapsed, Yugo appeared next to one of the Kiri ninjas who was injured. He turned his head and his eyes widened as he saw several afterimages of her sword. At the next moment, his head was sent flying in the air. Before the others could react, another head was sent flying. Finally, the Junons managed to react and counterattacked. forcing Yuga to retreat. However, she was very determined. As Buniro and her clones bombarded them with another round of explosion tags, she prepared herself to attack once again. At the same time, Fumito was also looking for an opportunity. Fujin's eyes glowed as he observed the conflict while standing on a tree branch. He analyzed. That's good. They were heavily outnumbered and outmatched as well, but by killing many of them in a trap and poisoning the rest, they have a complete advantage now. This mission has been completed almost perfectly. The only imperfect factor was that a bit of luck was involved in how they found the cave. Still, both Yugo and Fumito are good enough to be Ambu captains. Not many Ambu captains would be able to replicate such a result. The Kiri ninjas were fighting desperately while retreating to save their lives. They absolutely hated Yugo and the others. But unknown to them, an even stronger enemy was watching them. Actually, not one but two. Unknown to Fujin, another terrifying ninja was hiding and watching the fight. Juzo watched Yuga cut down 4 Kiri ninjas while thinking, they were supposed to be my targets. But that ninja's sword style. They are from Konoha. I don't know why Akatsuki needs money, but my mission will fail if the Konoha ninjas leave with their bodies. Yuga had just completed her second round of attack and was forced to retreat once again. However, before she could relax, she immediately slashed her sword to her right. A much larger sword clashed with her sword.